Chapter 1765, Battle of Pheta, 4. 3 days earlier, on the northern border of the Milky Way, the planet Pheta was a scene of intense military activity. After confirming that Dark Jedi Master Cricket had been ambushed and captured by the Geth, Lieutenant General Gilad Pellaeon convened a meeting with several other Dark Jedi Masters. They decided to launch a major counterattack to drive back the Geth's vanguard forces and then conduct an orbital bombardment on the location where Cricket was likely being held. This strategy would undoubtedly kill Cricket, but it would also prevent the Geth from using him for any nefarious purposes, such as turning him into a corpse puppet. Gilad Pellaeon suspected that the Geth had gone to great lengths to capture a Dark Jedi Master for a specific reason. However, he still instructed the other 3 Dark Jedi Masters, led by the human female Dark Master Patch, to attempt a rescue if possible. Under his command, the Galactic Empire's defenders on Pheta spent a day gathering and mobilizing their forces. They assembled over 10,000 Camino clone soldiers, an equal number of well-trained ordinary soldiers, and all available armored units from the surrounding battle zones. This formidable force launched a determined assault. Patch led the charge with 2 other Jedi Masters and 10 Dark Jedi Knights and apprentices, spearheading the elite force. The Galactic Empire Air Force, which had air superiority, was the first to engage. After shooting down several Geth fighter jets, they launched a relentless bombing campaign on the Geth positions. High-explosive bombs, thermobaric bombs, pulse bombs, and even proton bombs were deployed in a near-constant barrage, turning the area into a wasteland. Under such intense bombing, it seemed impossible for anything to survive. This air superiority, composed of more than 10,000 fighter jets, was Gilad Pellaeon's trump card against the Geth offensive. However, past combat experience had shown that even this level of bombing could not completely eliminate the Geth. Following the air assault, Patch led the ground forces in a determined attack. As expected, a large number of Geth and zombies emerged from the soil, tunnels, and ruins, attacking from all directions. To counter the Galactic Empire's air superiority, the Geth had dug countless tunnels in their occupied areas, allowing them to survive the bombings and launch surprise attacks. Despite the Geth's efforts, the bombings still disrupted their tactical deployment, making it difficult for them to assemble a large-scale force for a head-on confrontation. The troops led by Patch continued to break through the Geth defenses, and it was clear that the Geth had heavily invested in this direction, indicating they had no intention of retreating. This confirmed the suspicion that the Geth had a specific plan in mind. Under the powerful offensive of the Galactic Empire army, the Geth were forced to retreat. Meanwhile, in outer space, the fleets of the Galactic Empire and the Geth clashed again to support the ground battle. The fleets were evenly matched. The Geth warships were fewer but small, flexible, and heavily armed, while the Galactic Empire's larger Jaeger-class battlecruisers provided a counterbalance with their numbers and firepower. The battle for Pheta was far from over, but the Galactic Empire's forces were determined to push forward and uncover the Geth's true intentions. The Imperial military was hesitant to bolster Dun Wessex's forces any further. Dun himself felt that the current strength was sufficient and decided against reinforcing Gilad Pellaeon. On the first day of the offensive, Patch led the army to advance over 60 kilometers. However, on the second day, the Geth began to significantly increase their forces. Various corpse puppets surged forward like a tide. According to the fleet's scans from space, over 3 million corpse puppets were converging in their direction. Simultaneously, the underground passages of the Geth in this area became increasingly dense, revealing more hidden firepower. These were no longer mere passages, but clearly underground bases. Without launching such an attack, Patch and his forces would never have known that the Geth had constructed such a massive project less than 100 kilometers from the front line. At this point, the Galactic Empire's counterattack was unsustainable. Patch sensed that Cricket's force presence was within this area. After another intense aerial bombardment, the Imperial troops began to retreat. Meanwhile, Gilad Pellaeon focused his efforts on the space battlefield. He commanded the fleet to advance in a dense defensive formation, enter the predetermined coordinates, stabilize their position, and wait for the rotation of the planet Theta. As soon as the Imperial fleet was in position, they opened fire. Several powerful turbolaser cannons targeted the ground, striking where the Geth army was most concentrated. The massive explosions formed mushroom clouds, and a terrible sea of fire spread across the bombed area, turning it into a scene of utter devastation. The Imperial fleet did not hold back, disregarding any potential permanent environmental damage to the planet Theta. They fired at full power, showcasing the might of orbital bombardment. 10 kilometers away from the bombing site, Poch stood on high ground, watching the enormous flames rise into the sky with a solemn expression. She picked up her communicator and said slowly, "He's not dead. I can still feel it. Cricket's force, Poch covered her temples. "No, I feel his force becoming chaotic. Although he isn't dead, the orbital bombing has affected him. No, he must be killed. Lord Cricket is likely being held in the underground base. If the construction is very strong, Jaeger-level firepower might not be effective," Gilad Palayon said over the communication. "The Geth's counterattack is also very powerful, and I can't keep the fleet there for long to continue the bombardment." "Let's go there." Poch's face twisted with determination. "I can feel that if Cricket isn't killed now, he will probably kill all of us. What are the Geth using him for?" "If that's the case, then please proceed," Gilad Palayon replied. "This orbital bombardment should have killed most of the Geth troops in this area. You should have a chance. I will do my best to provide air and space cover." Poch nodded and turned to a clone commander. "The command of the army is given to you. Lead the army and try to prevent Geth and corpse puppets from other directions from entering here." "Yes." The clone commander stood at attention and saluted. Poch then turned to the other 2 Dark Jedi Masters. "Let's go. Head to the core of the bombing and find where Cricket is being held." Chapter 766, Taboo Experiment, Part 1. Pa led 3 other Dark Masters, the 40-year-old human male Master Malumba, the younger Farron female Master Bolingji, and the Weequay Master Benjara, who had previously felt Cricket's despair and nearly succumbed to madness. Along with their 10 Dark Jedi Knights and 5 Dark Jedi Apprentices, they prepared to enter the site of the recent bombing. They mobilized a massive Habuvu A6 Juggernaut, also known as a clone turbo tank, and brought along 100 fully armed clone soldiers and 8 reconnaissance drones. The Juggernaut, developed and built by Kuat Power Shipyard, is an enormous armored personnel carrier measuring 49.4 meters in length, 22 meters in height, and 19.6 meters in width. True to its name, it is indeed a giant. It is one of the few army units directly built by Kuat Power Dockyard, rather than being delegated to their subsidiary, Rosanna Heavy Engineering Company, which specializes in producing army equipment. This is also the largest armored vehicle used by the military from the Galactic Republic to the current Galactic Empire, except for the massive SPHT self-propelled artillery. The Juggernaut is driven by 5 pairs of huge steel wheels and is equipped with a powerful suspension system. Despite its size, it can reach a maximum speed of 160 kilometers per hour on flat ground, and ordinary obstacles are easily crushed by its massive wheels. The Juggernaut is armed with a heavy laser cannon, a high-speed close defense laser cannon, 2 anti-infantry blaster cannons, and 2 20-unit rocket launchers with 480 rounds of ammunition. Its firepower is formidable. It can carry up to 300 soldiers and has enough space to transport small airspeeders, hover motorcycles, and can also serve as a drone platform. Once the Juggernaut appears on the battlefield, it becomes an unstoppable force. However, this armored unit is still too bulky. While it is fast, its huge turning radius and high cost make it less popular with the military as the war progresses. Although it can carry up to 300 soldiers, you need that many to fully utilize its capabilities. Otherwise, why use such a massive unit for just 50 soldiers? Additionally, despite its powerful firepower and special close-range laser cannon, it is vulnerable to air attacks. If destroyed, it could mean the loss of an entire company of soldiers, a risk few are willing to take. On the battlefield, whether facing the Confederation of Independent Systems, the Principality of Dawn, or the current Geth, large units like the Juggernaut are prime targets. But for Pa and his team, who are on a mission to rescue Cricket, The Juggernaut is the right choice. The area has just been subjected to a powerful orbital bombing, leaving the terrain plowed and easier to traverse. It is unlikely that the Geth will suddenly ambush them from all directions. Pa and his team advanced quickly in the Juggernaut, covering more than 10 kilometers. Along the way, they saw scorched earth and even seas of fire in many places. The air was filled with harmful gases, byproducts of the turbo-laser cannon explosions. Turbo-lasers use explosive gas as a medium, and while an ordinary blaster rifle contains only a small amount, a shipborne turbo-laser cannon has an astonishing amount. When it explodes, it reacts with the surrounding air, causing severe environmental damage. This is one of the significant hazards caused by orbital bombing. Because of this, the Galactic Republic previously banned orbital bombing to protect the limited habitable planets from being destroyed in unrestricted wars. Ironically, it was the Galactic Republic itself that first broke this rule. The Idol-class turbine tank's steel wheels and massive body simply ignored the devastation. Even driving through a sea of fire had no impact on it. However, due to the orbital bombing, the surrounding electromagnetic environment became chaotic, severely affecting communications and rendering radar unreliable. The thick smoke further impaired visibility, prompting Pa to instruct Bangala to enter the watchtower R and raise it. In such an environment, thermal imaging, infrared, and radar waves were ineffective, making visual inspection the only viable method. To expand their field of vision, the turbine tank had a retractable watchtower that could rise to a maximum height of over 8 meters. Combined with the 22-meter-high body, it allowed them to survey the surroundings from a height of 30 meters. This design was a remedial measure to compensate for the turbine tank's large size and its difficulty adapting to complex battlefield environments. High-power searchlights around the tank barely illuminated the surroundings. Dark Masters like Pa entered a meditative state, using their perception of the Force to locate their targets. The scene was apocalyptic. Burning flames, fragmented debris, melted ground, and even flowing lava. The extreme heat caused some metal fragments to burn beyond recognition. No wreckage or larger parts were visible nearby. Everything had been obliterated by the orbital bombardment. In this hellish environment, it was impossible for anyone to enter under normal circumstances. However, they had no choice but to proceed. Delaying further could worsen Cricket's condition, and more Geth reinforcements might arrive, dragging them into another quagmire. They searched this infernal landscape for a day, even deploying reconnaissance drones, but found nothing. They had to rest temporarily in the tank. Unbeknownst to Pa and the others, far away in the Endor galaxy, a bright red dagger-shaped exclusive fighter jet rose into the sky, jumped into hyperspace, and headed in their direction. The next day, Pa and his team resumed their search. Flames and smoke were everywhere, but they still found nothing. Pa frowned, pondered for a moment, and suddenly said, "Fire and bomb." "What are you planning, Pa?" asked Dark Master Boringi. "We've lost track of Cricket through the Force, but I'm certain he's still alive. Maybe he's temporarily hidden. I don't know why," Pa explained. "If we fire bombardments everywhere, it might disturb him and force him to reveal his location." "I don't think this is a good idea. If Cricket is truly important to the Geth, they will undoubtedly send troops to respond. This would expose our position," Boringi cautioned, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter. Even if the Geth reinforcements come, we'll crush them." Dark Master Malumba said with a ferocious expression. "Fire!" Pa ordered decisively. "Let Bangala keep an eye out. They all once studied under Windu, and the Force and Cricket have a deeper bond." Chapter 1767, Taboo Experiment, Part 2, Boom Boom Boom. The 20-unit rocket launcher on the Idol-class turbine tank aimed directly at the open space next to it and fired several rockets. The violent explosions produced a deafening noise and scorched dust flew everywhere. However, there was still no reaction from the surroundings, except for the crackling sound of the unextinguished flames. The turbo tank continued forward, then fired its rockets again. The sound and shock waves of the rocket explosions echoed around once more, but there was still no result. At this moment, Banjara, the Weequay Dark Master who'd been observing from the watchtower, suddenly said over the wired communication, "I found something." "Have you sensed Cricket?" Pa asked with a frown. No, I saw something in front of me, at 11 o'clock, Banjara replied. Poch looked at the severely interfered navigation equipment and said, "This is the center point where a turbolaser cannon hit, and the surrounding environment is very complicated. What did you see?" "It should be a corner of the underground structure," Banjara said, peering through a telescope and vaguely seeing the outline of an angular structure amidst the billowing smoke. "Go and have a look," Poch gestured to the driver, and the turbine tank drove at high speed in that direction. Soon, the turbine tank entered an extremely huge crater. The crater was at least 1 kilometer in diameter, filled with melted magma and some cooled lava structures, showcasing the immense power of the turbolaser cannon. However, the question remained, what structure could withstand orbital bombardment without being blown to pieces? As the turbine tank approached, Poch and the others saw the outline of a burnt, blackened building ahead. The ambient temperature here exceeds 300 degrees. Even a turbine tank cannot stay here for long. Otherwise, as the temperature accumulates, the strength of the tank's suspension device will weaken, the clone driver said. "Let's go down and take a look first. You leave here for now and find a suitable place outside the crater to wait," Pa instructed, waving his hand. "Yes!" 4 dark Jedi Masters disembarked from the turbine tank. They used the Force to protect their bodies and isolate themselves from the surrounding high temperature. As powerful dark Jedi Masters, they could operate in such an extreme environment for more than an hour. They approached the outline of the building and found that it was indeed a huge structure buried deep underground. The powerful orbital bombardment had completely destroyed the surface layer, revealing the building. Banjara stepped forward, squatted down, and placed his hands on the still-hot building. He closed his eyes and began sensing. He and Cricket had received training from Master Windu and had practiced mind-reading by touching objects. After a moment, he opened his eyes and said through gritted teeth, "Cricket is inside this thing. I have some weak feelings." "Where's the entrance?" Malumba asked. Banjara pointed ahead. "Over there, about 1 kilometer away." They summoned the turbine tank again and headed in the direction sensed by Banjara. Sure enough, they found a buried entrance and exit. There should have been an elevator there, which was added later but had been blown up. However, the passage was still intact. The turbine tank used heavy laser cannons to melt away the debris blocking the passage. Patch left 20 soldiers to guard the turbine tank and proceeded down with the others. After passing through the more than 100-meter-long elevator shaft, they arrived at the bottom. It was a hall that looked very old, but there were also many Geth-style lighting fixtures installed around it. They could see some broken statues. Judging from the architectural style, it did not resemble the style of the previous Galactic Republic. "The ruins left by the Killik," Poch murmured, examining the ancient hall. Pa was well informed and could discern clues from the style of the statue. "I once followed my master to study the ruins of the Killik swarm on the planet Alderaan," he said. "That means the history here is at least 50,000 years old. The Geth discovered these ruins and used them as their base," Malumba added. "It's also possible that they found something in these ruins," Pa said, looking ahead. "Look over there, Geth." The others looked over and saw the remains of more than 10 Geth individuals scattered around. Among them was a 3-meter-tall red Geth elite. These powerful Geth had been killed. Bangala walked over, squatted down, and placed his hand on the remains of the Geth elite. "Judging from the damage, it seems to be a torn scratch. Let me try." He closed his eyes and used his touch to read minds. Suddenly, as if struck hard, he sat down on the ground, his expression horrified. This... What happened? What did you see?" Pa asked. "I didn't see anything, but I felt chaos and a primitive intention to kill." Bangala said, "No, if this continues, my force will lose control." "Then let's go inside," Pa said, pointing to several passages around them. "Each of us will lead a team and explore deeper." They divided into 4 groups and headed towards 4 different passages. The place was vast, with forks in the paths. Pa divided his troops again, allowing a dark Jedi to lead 5 clone soldiers down another branch. Along the way, they saw that the Geth had built many devices here. The energy supply had not been cut off, the lighting was still on, and some equipment was still running. However, Most of these things were destroyed, and they saw the remains of a large number of Geth. A conservative estimate suggested that at least 1,000 Geth had been wiped out here, all destroyed by claw attacks. This ruin is very strong. The previous orbital bombardment did not really threaten the core of the ruins, Pa said solemnly, looking around. But the Geth here have been killed, and the instruments and equipment have also been destroyed. Another Dark Jedi briefly checked a Geth terminal. Except for a few devices that were destroyed by claws, most of the others were damaged by shock, similar to a shockwave or something like that. Mulumba's voice suddenly came over the communication. I've discovered something here. This is a place where corpse puppets are made. There are a lot of dragon teeth here, as well as many corpse puppet remains. Be careful. If the Geth want to turn Cricket into a corpse puppet, he is probably nearby. If there is a problem, retreat immediately and wait for us to come and solve it together, Pa said. This place really stinks. Mulumba spat. Maybe the warehouse where the corpses are stacked is also nearby. Pa looked around her side. The place seemed to be where the Geth were charging, but there was nothing here except a large number of Geth wreckage. She found some equipment that was not destroyed but couldn't use the Geth equipment, so she handed it to a soldier to carry back for study. Mulumba said over the communication, I see it. It should be the corpse warehouse, belly splash thing. Damn! Ah! Suddenly, there was a scream in the background of the communication. Immediately afterward, Mulumba exclaimed, There is something. Chapter 1768, To Experiment, Part 2. Don't come into contact with that thing. Let the clones handle it and leave quickly. Pa shouted urgently. She unsheathed her lightsaber, igniting it with a swift motion. 2 blood-red blades illuminated her face, twisted with anger and determination. Screams echoed through the communication channel, but fortunately, they were all from the clone soldiers. Mulumba's voice roared through the static. Come out! Where are you? Suddenly, a muffled bang interrupted the transmission, followed by heavy interference that cut off the communication entirely. At that moment, Pa sensed an extremely dark and chaotic force. Go! Move forward! Prepare to fight! Pa commanded, sprinting towards the source of the dark energy. With the communication down, she couldn't contact the others or ascertain Mulumba's status, but she trusted that they, too, had sensed the dark side force. Although the underground base was complex, they had recently explored it and found it wasn't particularly large. As they advanced, they encountered the remains of Geth strewn about. It was clear that whatever had killed the Geth was now battling Mulumba's team. Gunshots and screams grew louder as Pa quickened her pace. Passing through another hall, she saw at least 1,000 dragon teeth, densely erected, some still impaling corpses that were badly damaged. It was evident that the Geth had released all the corpse puppets in a desperate attempt to resist, but to no avail. The air was thick with the nauseating stench of decay. Pa donned a simple respirator and used a force barrier to block some of the odor, but it still made her uncomfortable. The sound of blaster fire and screams drew nearer, and she saw the green flashes of blaster beams. Rushing forward, Pa found 3 clone soldiers retreating and firing wildly. Their green blaster beams hit nothing. Suddenly, a black shadow attacked one of the soldiers from behind, sending him flying several meters. His armor bore a long, deep scratch. Reacting instantly, Pa raised her hand and used the force to grab the airborne soldier, throwing him to the opposite wall. He hit the wall with a thud, but was otherwise unharmed. The 2 remaining clone soldiers continued firing erratically. One of them shouted, Lord, we can't hit that thing. What happened? Pa demanded. The thing we found in the pile of corpses ahead, it's humanoid but too fast for us to catch, the clone trooper gasped. Where's Mulumba? Pa asked urgently. The clone shook his head. I don't know. We got separated. That thing screamed, and everything around it was blown away by the sound. Follow me. Let's go, Pa ordered. At that moment, one of the clone soldiers fell to his knees. No, I can't. I'm dizzy. He removed his helmet, revealing blood streaming from his orifices and a contorted face. I'm dizzy. Let me rest. Just a moment. Before he could finish, he collapsed and stopped moving. Pa understood that this was the result of an extremely powerful force impact. These soldiers must have been caught in the periphery of the blast. They were not killed immediately, but the impact had severely injured their internal organs and brains. They had been holding on for a breath, but now, as soon as they let go, they were dead. Without further hesitation, Pa grabbed her lightsaber and rushed towards the corpse warehouse. Along the way, she saw the bodies of several cloned soldiers. All of these soldiers had been smashed into the walls with tremendous force and died. Blood and minced meat flowed out from the gaps in their deformed armor, showcasing the sheer power of the impact. The aftermath of the dark side of the Force was still palpable. Pa's eyes flashed with determination as she sped up. The stench in the warehouse was overwhelming. Countless corpses were piled up, all materials that Geth had gathered to create corpse puppets. Putrid liquid covered the ground. After all the Geth in this base were wiped out, no one had dealt with these corpses, so they were left to rot and stink. Suddenly a terrible whisper filled the air, as if someone was speaking directly into her ear. It seemed both far away and very close, coming from all directions. Pa reacted instantly, waving her two lightsabers with a backhand motion like two long, bloody dragons. At that moment, she finally saw a figure, a person floating about half a meter above the ground. It was Cricket, the one they had been searching for. But the encounter was fleeting. When Pa's lightsaber slashed past, Cricket vanished in an instant. The next second, he reappeared in another direction without any warning. A clone trooper following Pa had no time to react and was knocked away by Cricket's claw from behind. The power was immense. Almost in midair, the clone's body was torn apart. Bastard! Pa was both shocked and furious. She didn't hesitate and rushed forward with her lightsaber. However, Cricket disappeared again, reappearing in another part of the hall in a flash. The other clone troopers, experienced and quick to adapt, immediately spread out and began shooting wildly at Cricket. However, a powerful force barrier blocked all the shots. Cricket raised a hand lightly, and all the blaster beams were deflected by the invisible force. He floated slowly, half a meter above the ground, allowing Pa to see his current state. Cricket's body resembled those of the corpse puppets, with numerous tubes inserted into it. His body was covered with blue glowing dots, and he was as dry as a skeleton. His lower abdomen was extremely sunken, as if hollowed out, but a strange crystal embedded in his abdominal cavity emitted an ominous light. His fingers had become much longer, like 5 sharp claws, and the fingertips shone with the same blue light. His face was covered in scars, and his eyes had been replaced by something half mechanical and half biological, with no pupils, just an empty white light. Is it really a corpse puppet? No, it seems to be more than that. Pa gritted her teeth, her heart heavy with solemnity. She could sense the terrifying and chaotic dark side force emanating from Cricket. Cricket, wake up! What did Geth do to you? Pa shouted loudly. Cricket opened his mouth, looking like he wanted to say something. Pa watched him intently, but suddenly a premonition of danger washed over her. She would die. She jumped back instantly, using all her force to form a barrier in front of her. Then, Cricket let out a terrible scream. Ah! End of this chapter. Chapter 1769, Cleaning Up the Mess, Part 1. Cricket let out a terrifying scream, followed by a powerful wave of force. Despite being prepared, Pa was directly knocked away by the shockwave. The scream was accompanied by a tremor that seemed to pierce the soul, affecting everyone present. Almost all were blown away. The clone soldiers closest to the epicenter were unable to resist, slamming into the walls with blood splattering everywhere, never to stand again. The remaining Dark Apprentices and Dark Warriors fared slightly better, except for one Dark Apprentice who fell to the ground, clutching his head and screaming. The others stood up, activated their lightsabers, and prepared to fight. Kill him! Pa recovered quickly. She shouted and rushed forward with 2 lightsabers. The blades thrust out like swimming dragons, but it was in vain. Cricket's figure disappeared suddenly, reappearing beside a Dark Apprentice. With a swift motion, his long claws swung out, tearing the apprentice in half before he could react. Blood fell like rain, and Cricket became even more excited in the crimson downpour. It grabbed the mutilated body of the Dark Apprentice, its long claws piercing deeply into the flesh, pulling out countless streams of blood. Bastard! Pa rushed forward again, stabbing out with her sword. But Cricket used the corpse as a shield, and the lightsaber chopped it into pieces. However, beneath the flesh, the pair of bloody claws blocked the lightsaber's chops. Then, with a powerful swipe, Cricket struck Pa's force barrier, making her dizzy and consuming a significant amount of her energy. The impact demonstrated the sheer power of Cricket's grasp. Other Dark Warriors and Dark Apprentices gathered around to besiege Cricket. However, Cricket moved freely among the crowd, its figure flashing and reappearing in different places, making it impossible to track. It was teleporting. Not only that, it used a force barrier more powerful than the one Pa, a former Jedi Master, could muster. The numerical advantage was meaningless against such a monster. Wow! Another Dark Warrior fell to Cricket, and the blood splattering on it made it even more excited. It seemed to grow stronger with each kill. Be careful, it sucks blood. It absorbs our force through blood. Malumba's voice came from the other side. He was holding his lightsaber upside down, covering a wound on his waist with his other hand, blood dripping. What did you say? Pa was shocked. Let those apprentices go away. You guys, get out! Malumba shouted, rushing forward with his lightsaber. The Dark Warriors and Dark Apprentices hurriedly retreated as if granted amnesty. But it wasn't that easy. Even without teleporting, Cricket's speed was ghostly. 3 more fell under its claws in quick succession. Pa and Malumba attacked Cricket from both sides, but even the combined power of 2 Dark Masters was insufficient. Cricket was too fast, too powerful, and could teleport effortlessly. Where are Bangala and Balingji? Pa yelled. I didn't see anyone, Malumba replied, struggling to block Cricket's powerful claw. Damn it, we need to retreat too, Pa said. She realized that the monster Cricket had become was too powerful for them to handle. They could barely land an effective attack, let alone break through its formidable force barrier. No, it's too fast. We can't run away, Malumba shouted through gritted teeth. At that moment, an animalistic roar echoed from the other side of the passage. The weak-wayed Dark Master Bangara rushed over, covered in blood. The dark side power enveloping his body was immensely powerful and chaotic. A black mist-like substance shrouded him, with only his eyes emitting an ominous golden light, clearly visible in the darkness. Asshole! He's out of control! Pa screamed, retreating quickly. At this moment, Bangala was already roaring and charging towards Cricket. He had just resonated with Cricket's dark and chaotic force. Now, under the influence of the dark side, he had completely lost control and Beck, a victim, a monster driven purely by instinct. The 2 monsters clashed, but it was evident that Bangala was no match. He was swiftly knocked away by Cricket's claw. Let's go too. Use Bangala as a human shield, Malumba shouted. Damn it, Pa gritted her teeth. She wanted to flee, but in front of this monster that could move instantly, escaping seemed impossible. So she rushed forward again, brandishing her swords. Meanwhile, outside the underground base, the female fallen Dark Master Balingji was fleeing frantically. Her force perception was stronger than others. When Cricket was awakened from the pile of corpses by Malumba, she had already sensed the extremely powerful and chaotic dark side force. She clearly felt the power and disorder of this force, and foresaw that if she became its enemy, she would only meet one end, being torn to pieces. So she chose to run away without hesitation. She sprinted towards the turbine tank they had arrived in, her mind focused solely on escaping as quickly as possible. However, when she reached the outside, she was horrified to find a bright red fighter jet hovering above the Idol-class turbine tank. The jet was 20 meters long, shaped like a dagger with a sharp horn protruding from the front. Underneath the fighter jet stood a man, a short figure clad in a black cloak. He stood motionless, exuding a terrifying sense of oppression, and she recognized him, the deceased angel. Balingji muttered from the depths of her throat, No, 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 no! Overcome with fear, she ran away. She no longer knew where to go, so she instinctively ran towards the inside of the turbine tank. Darth Malthael did not stop her. He merely stood there watching her actions. Her frightened negative emotions fed the force, making him feel extremely comfortable. Balingji, who had rushed into the turbine tank, made her way to the cockpit, only to find all the clone soldiers left behind lying motionless on the ground. She growled and ran towards the back, desperately seeking a safe hiding place within the massive vehicle. However, she saw Darth Malthael draw the ferocious handle from his back, and a black plasma blade shot out instantly. At that moment, it seemed as if all the light around him had been swallowed up. Then, Darth Malthael slashed with his sword. Bolinggi felt her vision darken. When her eyes adjusted, she saw that the enormous armored vehicle, nearly 50 meters long and 22 meters high, had been split in two by his sword. Chapter 1770, Cleaning Up the Mess, Part 2. Boom! The massive Idol-class turbine tank split in half and crashed to the ground with a deafening thud. Bolinggi, despite her skills, landed steadily but was still in shock. She turned to look at the burning wreckage of the tank, then back at the motionless figure of the deceased angel, standing as if nothing had happened. Her body trembled, and all her will to resist evaporated. The hilt of her lightsaber slipped from her grasp and clattered to the ground. Bolinggi slowly approached Darth Malthael, her body still shaking. When she reached the Sith Lord, she knelt, her knees trembling, and bowed her head to the ground. I am willing to surrender to you, Great Lord." "You want to surrender? Interesting," Darth Malthael said, looking down at the fallen Dark Jedi Master kneeling before him. She was around 30 years old, with the unique green skin of the fallen people. Her head was mostly shaved, save for a ponytail at the back, a common hairstyle among her kind. "Yes, I am willing to serve you wholeheartedly," Bolinggi replied. "Very good, heh?" Darth Malthael's smile was sinister. "I won't treat you badly. As it happens, I have a few Archon-class aircraft carriers that need captains. These are super-large battleships, over 3,000 meters long. I will give one of them to you." Thank you, Lord, for your gift. I will always remember your kindness and generosity." Bolinggi began, but her words were cut short. Buzz, the black lightsaber, pierced her back from top to bottom. Sir, poof." Bolinggi looked up in disbelief at Darth Malthael, who remained expressionless. She tried to speak, but only blood came from her mouth. "Very good, my captain. Now you can take office," Darth Malthael said with a ferocious laugh, pulling out the soul-stealing lightsaber. As the lightsaber was withdrawn, a shadow identical to Bolinggi was dragged out of her body, restrained mid-air by the weapon, emitting miserable howls. Her body fell to the ground, twitching before it stopped moving. Darth Malthael waved his hand, capturing Bolinggi's soul. With a slight exertion, she showed an expression of great pain and wailed loudly. Then he pressed her body, and the soul was forced back in. Bolinggi twitched again, got up from the ground, and looked at Darth Malthael with dull eyes. After a moment, she knelt again. "I will always serve you, my lord." "What happened down there?" Darth Malthael asked calmly. "Cricket was captured by the Geth. Pa suspected the Geth had a conspiracy, so he launched an orbital bombing here. But Cricket meth. Pa was worried something might go wrong, so he took us to investigate personally," Bolinggi explained. "Then, Malumba found him first, but that force, it was too terrifying. It was chaotic. There was no emotion, only killing, only destruction." Bolinggi's expression was one of extreme fear, her body trembling. "There is a bond between Bangara and Cricket's force. He couldn't bear the chaotic dark side force and lost control, going mad. He slaughtered everyone around him. I used my dark warriors as human shields and ran out." Darth Malthael nodded and walked towards the entrance of the underground base. "Let's go, follow me." Bolinggi looked at the dark, deep entrance with horror and took a step back. Suddenly, a terrible pain surged from her soul. She screamed loudly, rolling violently on the ground. After a while, the pain abruptly stopped. She stood up from the ground, looked at Darth Malthael, who had already walked in, gritted her teeth, and followed. Deep in the underground base, the battle had reached an extremely tragic level. Although the out-of-control and crazed Bangara was violent and unpredictable, he was no match for Cricket, who had transformed into a monstrous being. Pa and Malumba used Bangara's frenzied attacks as a cover, hiding behind him and waiting for an opportunity to strike at Cricket. This tactic had some effect, giving them a chance to attack Cricket. However, the result was still not optimistic. They discovered that the force barrier around Cricket was so strong that even a lightsaber couldn't penetrate it. The situation seemed hopeless. Cricket continued to teleport erratically, while Bangara chased him wildly, slashing in every direction. Pa and Malumba circled around, still unable to find an opening. Suddenly, Pa felt a chill run down her spine. She turned around abruptly and saw rotting, stinking corpses rising from the ground on the other side of the pile of bodies. The sight was horrifying, almost paralyzing her with fear. However, the corpses ignored her and leaped towards Cricket instead. In a short time, hundreds of corpses had rushed forward. Cricket's chaotic, turbid eyes scanned the area. He opened his gaping mouth and let out a terrifying scream. Ah! The roar, mixed with a powerful shockwave, blew the surrounding corpses away, tearing many apart in midair. At that moment, a dark shadow arrived first. The black lightsaber struck Cricket's force barrier squarely. The power in the strike was immense, visibly weakening the barrier. But this was just the beginning. The shadow moved with incredible speed, slashing at Cricket with one sword after another, delivering dozens of strikes in an instant. Cricket was forced to retreat. It suddenly dodged and disappeared, reappearing directly behind Darth Malthael. However, Darth Malthael anticipated the move. His sword struck backward as if he had foreseen it. Buzz! Another strike! Boom! Cricket's body slammed into the wall, rubble flying everywhere, and its force barrier shattered. Mulumba and Pa stared in disbelief. In just 10 seconds, the seemingly invincible Cricket's force barrier had been broken. What terrifying power this was. It's the Angel of Death. Let's go! Pa quickly pulled Mulumba, urging him to run outside, regardless of whether he had fully processed what had just happened. Chapter 1771, Cleaning Up the Mess, Part 2. Mulumba was also shocked by the terrifying power of the deceased angel. He saw the crazed Bangala rushing towards the deceased angel and took the opportunity to follow Pa and sneak out. However, Buzz! A blood-red lightsaber blocked their way. Pa suddenly raised her head, looked at the person blocking their path, and said angrily, "Bolingji, you coward! What are you doing?" "The Lord said that no one can get out alive," Bolingji replied with a strange expression on his face. "Asshole! Haven't you considered that you can't get out alive?" Pa shouted. But then she saw the hole in Bolingji's chest. Through the burnt clothes and wounds, she could clearly see the scene behind him. His body had been pierced. Pa gasped and realized that Bolingji in front of her was already a dead man. "Get away!" Mulumba roared loudly and charged towards Bolingji with his lightsaber. Pa reacted and immediately rushed forward, her swords waving. On the other side, Bangala, who had fallen into madness, did not care. Everything that appeared in front of him was his target for killing. Darth Malthael now completely suppressed Cricket, and he was the one dangling in front of Bangala's eyes, so he naturally became the first target of Bangala's attack. Roar! Bangala let out a wild roar and slashed hard with his lightsaber. However, Darth Malthael didn't even look at him and cut off Bangala's head with a backhand sword, as if it was nothing at all. Seeing Bangala's head missing, Cricket became even more furious. It suddenly dropped Darth Malthael and rushed towards Bangala's headless body, picking up the body with both paws. It pierced directly into it, drawing out countless streams of blood from both claws. Darth Malthael stepped aside, observing the scene. Seeing Cricket's actions, he frowned. Using blood to absorb the Force? I seem to have seen this plot before. He thought about it and determined that it was a plot he had seen before, rather than information he got after coming to this world. In other words, this specific information had not yet been known to his Dawn Principality intelligence organization, and it was unclear whether it had happened or not. This galaxy is so vast that he couldn't control it all. Countless things were happening on countless planets at any given time. As for where and what happened, he couldn't possibly know everything. There were many things he had seen in the plot that were quite famous, but now the intelligence department had not received any information at all. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Knowing the plot had countless benefits, but it also had its limitations. At this time, Cricket had been sucked into a mummy by Bangala. Its eyes glowed with scarlet light, and the force within it became more powerful and chaotic. With a roar, its figure suddenly disappeared and reappeared behind Pa, who was fighting Bolingji. It actually knew how to pick out the weak targets. However, Darth Malthael had already foreseen it. He raised his hand and a blood-red lightning bolt condensed on his fingertips. The next second, the lightning struck Cricket directly on the back. The aftermath of the lightning was still potent, and the three people fighting were blown away with a bang. When Pa and Mulumba got up, Dizzy and disoriented, they were horrified to see Darth Malthael standing in front of them. With a pop, the two of them knelt on the ground without any hesitation. "Please spare our lives, Lord. We are willing to serve you as our Lord." Who knew that with just a buzzing sound, Plunged picked up two lightsabers from the ground and pierced their backs directly from behind. She said with a ferocious expression, "The Lord said, 'Welcome to join.' You traitor." Pa cursed with her last strength. "Ha ha! Only death can serve the Lord. Death!" Plunged laughed maniacally. Darth Malthael didn't pay attention to the ugly behavior of these dark Jedi Masters. These people had betrayed the Jedi Order, forsaking loyalty and belief. They had betrayed the Jedi Order before, and now they could betray the Galactic Empire. In the future, they could even betray themselves. For these scum, indeed, death is the best ending. But for him, death is just the beginning. Darth Malthael raised his hand and pulled out the souls of Pa and Malumba, holding them in his grasp. The force of death began to work, and the two souls emitted silent screams of immense pain. This was pain that acted directly on the soul, pure, unadulterated agony. Ignoring the fallen, Darth Malthael turned his attention to Cricket. The monster was struggling on the ground, trying to rise again. It roared loudly at Darth Malthael, as if it would tear him apart the moment it could stand. But it was futile. Darth Malthael swiftly decapitated it with his sword. The dust settled, and there was not a single living person left in the underground base. The Dark Warriors and Dark Apprentices who had tried to escape were all dead, some killed by Cricket, some by the crazed Bangala, and others by Plunged. None had escaped. Darth Malthael knelt down, picked up Cricket's head, and examined it closely. This is the Geth Banshee. In the plot of Mass Effect, they are super corpse puppets made by the powerful psychic Asari. But this guy, its power far exceeds that of a Banshee. No. He frowned. No matter how powerful this thing is, with only its killing instinct, it couldn't possibly harm me while I'm exploring the Endor galaxy across countless light years. He discarded the head and focused on the black crystal embedded in Cricket's abdomen. The crystal emitted ominous power fluctuations and looked very strange. Darth Malthael recognized it as a kyber crystal. A black kyber crystal? Unheard of. The only possibility was that some extremely dark and evil force had contaminated this crystal. Darth Malthael thought for a moment, then reached out to take the crystal. His other hand was already protected by Little Klesh's gauntlet, ensuring no accidents would occur. However, as soon as his fingers touched the black kyber crystal, he felt a sudden bang in his head. An extremely angry voice echoed in his mind. "You have gone too far, Darth Malthael. Not only did you destroy the Chosen One, but now you want to harm the Force." Chapter 1772, The Controller of the Force. Who? Darth Malthael suddenly rose, his black lightsaber sweeping across in an instant. However, he didn't touch anything. At that moment, the dark kyber crystal exploded. An extremely evil force burst out instantly. Darth Malthael bore the brunt of this power. Little Klesh's gauntlet instantly formed a barrier to protect him. However, even with the barrier, Darth Malthael felt as if his soul had been struck hard. He took 2 steps back, concentrating all his death force in front of him to block the malevolent energy. The black kyber crystal shattered, turning into countless black dust particles that disappeared into the air. But the voice that had spoken never reappeared, as if it had never existed. Darth Malthael looked around with vigilance, his force senses fully extended, absorbing all the force fluctuations in the area. Yet, he found nothing. The expression on Darth Malthael's face grew grim. Although he couldn't find the source, he had a rough idea of who it was from the voice and the words spoken. Father, not his biological father, but one of the 3 ones. The Father can be said to be the most essential existence of the Force and its controller. In a sense, he could even be considered the god of this world. There are only 3 ones: the Father, the Son, and the Daughter. The Father is the balancer of the Force and the source of all power, while the Son represents the darkness of the Force, and the Daughter represents the light of the Force. However, despite their almost divine power, they do not possess divinity in the traditional sense. Their personalities and behaviors are no different from other beings. They still experience emotions, anger, sorrow, and joy, and sometimes they can be irrational and aggressive. Based on his understanding of the plot, Darth Malthael knew there was a fourth entity, not one of the ones, but inextricably linked to them, the Mother. However, this existence is too taboo. It is not an exaggeration to say she is the biggest secret in the entire galaxy. Now, Darth Malthael does not even dare to think about her. Disturbing the Mother could result in instant death without a trace. In comparison, at least the other three ones can be reasoned with. The person who had just spoken to him and detonated the Kyber crystal was probably the father. What had Geth done to anger the father? Darth Malthael frowned. He also realized that the father's anger was not directed at Geth, but at him. Although his relationship with the Geth is unclear to outsiders, and even if he tries to deny it, he cannot reverse this fact. This experiment was none of his business. It's not surprising that the father knows he brought the Geth. But if the father could destroy the black Kyber crystal, why wait until he touched it before doing so? Why not do it earlier? Darth Malthael felt a wave of frustration. He felt he was taking the blame for Geth, and the Ones, his heart sank. In the original plot, the Ones live in a space called Mortis. The father balances the power between the son and the daughter and prevents them from leaving. The balance between the son and the daughter also means the balance between the light side and the dark side of the Force. If they were allowed to leave Mortis, no one in the galaxy could resist them. Darth Malthael was certain that even if he teamed up with Darth Sidious, Count Dooku, and others, they would not be a match for any of the Ones. Mortis is located in a space that does not belong to the real world and cannot be reached by normal means. But in the plot, they took the initiative to let Anakin Skywalker go to Mortis, and the father wanted the chosen one, Anakin, to take his place to continue maintaining the balance between the son and the daughter. I don't know. If this plot were happening now, their existence would pose a significant threat to Darth Malthael. Among them, the son has a perverse and violent personality. Although he represents the dark side, the first thing he would do upon seeing Darth Malthael is to kill him quickly. Someone like him would undoubtedly see Darth Malthael as an obstacle to his own ambitions. The daughter, representing the light side, would most likely engage in a fight upon their meeting. As for the father, he had already made his stance clear. The master of the Force likely blames himself for Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side. Additionally, he has taken responsibility for the Geth, leaving him with little hope. How could this master look down upon himself? What an injustice! Darth Malthael has always been blamed by others, so when did he start taking the blame twice in a row? Based on his understanding of Star Wars, the hostility between himself and the three Tyee is foreseeable. In the future, even the Mother will be a hidden danger that must be resolved. But it has never been this urgent. He thought he would need at least decades or even hundreds of years of practice before he could compete with Tyee. Now he felt like an ant in front of these godlike beings. There's nothing worse than angering the father at this point. Feeling extremely depressed, Darth Malthael sent his 3 resurrected undead slaves, Bolingji, Pa, and Mulumba, to monitor his red comet. He instructed them to report to the Galactic Empire defenders on the planet and ask them not to interfere. After that, he ventured deeper into the base. Guided by the Force, he quickly navigated the underground base. The base, covering about 100,000 square meters, was not large, but certainly not small. The underground passages extended in all directions, making the place even more complex. However, his investigation revealed that the base itself was not the most crucial element. The true purpose of the base was to protect something beneath it. In the deepest part of the base, Darth Malthael discovered an underground passage that had been excavated. He walked down the narrow passage, initially surprised by its size. Given the Geth's restless nature, why hadn't they dug a larger tunnel? But after a while, he realized he had misunderstood the Geth. It wasn't that they didn't want to dig a bigger tunnel. It was because the 4 walls of the tunnel were lined with an extremely hard chitin carapace. Chapter 1773, Research on Geth, Part 1. Darth Malthael reached out and touched the material hidden within the rock formations. It didn't feel like metal or rock. On the contrary, it was slightly warm, resembling an insect's carapace. He immediately thought of an ancient civilization, the Killik. This super insect civilization once dominated the entire galaxy between 35,000 and over 100,000 years ago. If it was indeed the Killik, then this discovery was not surprising. The rise and fall of the Killik people were closely connected with the ancient entity known as Tai. For instance, the giant space station, Middle Point Center, located at the Lagrange point between the planets Talus and Traus in the Corellia galaxy, was built under the guidance of Tai's followers, known as the Star Builders. When activated, the station could emit powerful gravitational waves capable of moving any planet within the Milky Way. At full power, it could even move a black hole. Such a superweapon was a testament to Tai's power and the former glory of the Killik people. The overlords of the galaxy indeed wielded terrifying force. Darth Malthael concentrated the force on his fingertips and tested the Titanus carapace. He found that it had a strong defense against the force. Even with his considerable power, it was difficult to damage it. Although he only briefly applied pressure, his force power was usually enough to gouge a large hole in the durasteel used by the Galactic Empire to build battleships. Yet here, the Chiton remained unscathed. As he continued his descent, he felt like he was navigating an ant nest with winding passages everywhere. Most of the passages had collapsed and were inaccessible. The collapse was so severe that even Darth Malthael was shocked. The chitinous carapace, which was as hard as it was, had been melted and broken, mixed with countless rubbles, and turned into ruins. Such destruction was beyond the capability of ordinary orbital bombardment. Further exploration revealed that the Geth were indeed studying these ruins, which likely belonged to the Killik people. The area was filled with research equipment, terminals, drilling tools, and lighting devices. The Geth, like Darth Malthael, were interested in studying the chitinous carapace. A successful study would be a major breakthrough in materials science. However, apart from the Geth's research equipment and some cut chitinous carapace, nothing else was found. Some stones or fossils were so old that their origins were indiscernible. Only a few egg fossils were discovered in a half-collapsed area, possibly belonging to the Killik people. When Darth Malthael reached the deepest part of the ruins, he finally found what he was looking for. This area was a large hall, and the surrounding chitinous carapace was more ferocious. The carapace had sharp edges, many protrusions, and terrifying barbs. They appeared more concentrated and three-dimensional, as if several huge beetles, dozens of meters long, were lying on the walls. These beetle-like carapaces had their longest, most ferocious, and sharpest parts pointed at the center of the hall, forming a circular area. This area was also where the Geth had the most research instruments. Most of the surrounding instruments were destroyed, likely by the previous Super Banshee, Darth Malthael's name for the entity, despite it being a man. The Super Banshee had come here and destroyed all the Geth. This was probably where the Geth discovered the black Kyber crystal. Darth Malthael looked around once more, confirming that he could no longer obtain any more information. He then found a Geth terminal and began to access its data. Darth Malthael approached a relatively intact terminal and activated it. He then took out a specialized communicator and linked it to the terminal. Moments later, the holographic projection of the communicator displayed a Geth avatar composed of countless small images. "You have arrived at our testing site, ally," the Geth said. "What exactly are you doing here? What have you discovered?" Darth Malthael asked, frowning. "A mere fragment holds the key to revealing the nature of this universe," the Geth replied. "Is it the crystal?" Malthael inquired. "A corpse that has lasted tens of thousands of years without decaying, and the crystal we found on it," the Geth explained. "After extensive research, we discovered that the reason the corpse did not decay is because this crystal continuously supplies it with energy. This defies common sense, as the crystal's size should not allow for such powerful and lasting energy." "Where is the body now?" Darth Malthael asked. "After we removed the crystal, the body immediately turned to dust. This is highly unusual, as even if these insectoid races have been dead for tens of thousands of years, their exoskeletons should remain intact. The fact that the shell disintegrated into dust instantly suggests the crystal's power is extraordinary," the Geth elaborated. "So you used this crystal to create a Banshee corpse puppet?" Darth Malthael's frown deepened. That was the original purpose of the crystal, the Geth confirmed. According to our research, the corpse embedded with the black crystal was designed to be a container for it, essentially creating a super warrior. We attempted to replicate this, but ordinary organisms could not withstand the crystal's power. The moment it was embedded, the body turned to ashes. We had to find a strong, force-sensitive individual to carry it. So you contacted Darth Lilim for assistance? Darth Malthil's voice grew angrier. Where is she? Why hasn't she responded to my communications? Our ally Darth Lilim helped us set the trap. She deceived the force-sensitive individual named Cricket using her precognition abilities and designed a trap to capture him, the Geth explained. When Cricket lost control, she was injured but managed to escape. Why did Cricket lose control? Darth Malthael asked, trying to suppress his anger. We employed various control methods, including mechanical, programmatic, and genetic controls, as well as corpse puppet manufacturing technology. However, when the crystal was embedded, Cricket immediately lost control. All control methods failed simultaneously, and he began to attack us. The test was a failure, the Geth admitted. Enough! Cease this experiment immediately and give me the test data, Darth Malthael demanded, his face dark with anger. End of chapter. Chapter 1774, Research on Geth, Part 2. We will transmit the test data to you immediately, ally. However, we do not understand why we must cease our research, Geth inquired. Darth Malthael responded solemnly. This research will provoke hostility from an unknown entity. In fact, the hostility has already been generated, and we cannot afford a conflict at this time. Unknown entity? The purpose of our research is to turn the unknown into the known, Geth replied. If you wish to study the Force, you may, but it must not be in the direction you have chosen, Darth Malthael said, waving his hand. I need to see your experimental data to identify the problem. There are indeed issues with the test, but we have recalculated and analyzed it. We have 3,409 solutions to try. We still do not understand why we must stop testing, Geth said. Based on your understanding of this underground lair made of chitinous carapace where I stand now, what do you think of this civilization? Darth Malthael asked. This chitin carapace is currently the best material in terms of toughness, ductility, hardness, heat resistance, and corrosion resistance. We have conducted extensive research but still cannot decipher its structure, Geth replied. So, how many corpses did you find in this lair? Darth Malthael asked again. No corpses other than the black crystal container were found in this nest. However, in the base above, we discovered the corpses of 17 large insects. These corpses were once stored in glass containers, but the containers were damaged, and the internal organs of the corpses decomposed completely. The insect shells, however, remained intact without any corrosion, Geth replied. We have preserved these corpses. Then I can share some information I know, Darth Malthael said. Those insects are the Killiks, an ancient super-civilization that once dominated the galaxy over 100,000 years ago. The chitinous nest is their creation. The base above, judging by its architectural style, belongs to the infinite empire that rose 30,000 years ago. It seems they excavated the ruins of this nest, seeking its secrets. This is helpful information. Data recorded, Geth acknowledged. The Killik civilization was more powerful than we imagined. To a certain extent, they are similar to you, as they possess a typical Gestalt consciousness. They mastered astronomical levels of super technology, capable of moving planets and even black holes, Darth Malthael continued. A civilization that dominates the galaxy should be powerful, Geth said. But such an extremely powerful civilization disappeared abruptly 35,000 years ago. The Killik people's technology, culture, and intelligence degraded to a medieval level, and they nearly vanished from the galaxy, Darth Malthael explained. Is it because they studied that black crystal fragment? Geth asked. It is unclear, but what I do know is that they offended the same entity you have angered by studying this black crystal fragment, Darth Malthael said. We understand. The experiment will be temporarily suspended, ally. Geth finally agreed to Darth Malthael's request. Destroy this place, Darth Malthael commanded, turning around and walking out. As you wish, our ally, Geth responded. All the surrounding instruments and equipment, including the lighting, dimmed simultaneously. A bright red dagger-shaped fighter jet, the the red comet, soared into the sky and disappeared within seconds. However, in the now dark base, Geth's soliloquy echoed, "Killing Darth Sidious is a very difficult goal. If we cannot understand the Force, our objectives will not be achieved. But the Covenant will be honored, our allies, and our master." In the deepest part of the core area of the Sokaron satellite, in the depths of the Geth's underground lair, a man submerged in Bacta liquid, connected by countless cables and data lines, suddenly trembled and opened his eyes. His eyes were pitch black, devoid of pupils or whites, filled only with an abyssal darkness. In the next instant, the entire undergrowth and a base, along with the proton bombs buried within, exploded violently. The powerful explosion, confined within the limited underground space, intensified its destructive force. The ground above swelled upwards like a balloon before it could no longer withstand the expanding shock wave and flames, resulting in a massive eruption. Simultaneously, Vice Admiral Gilad Pellaeon of the Galactic Empire, having learned from the life monitoring system that Patch and several other Dark Jedi Masters had been killed, issued an order for orbital bombardment. The Imperial fleet reorganized its formation, entered the planet's outer orbit, and launched an even more intense orbital bombardment on the location where Patch and the others had perished. At this time, the Geth fleet had begun to retreat, showing no intention of stopping the Imperial fleet's actions. They were using transport ships to evacuate their ground troops, seemingly preparing for a full retreat. This allowed the orbital bombardment to proceed smoothly. Given that the 4 Dark Jedi Masters, along with more than 10 Dark Jedi Knights and apprentices, had all died in this area, Gilad Pellaeon marked it as a high-danger zone. He ordered the orbital bombardment without any reservations, aiming to completely obliterate the area, even at the risk of causing tectonic shifts. Countless dazzling beams of light descended from the sky, fired from the heavy turbolaser cannons on the Jaeger-class battlecruiser in orbit. Each beam caused a massive explosion and flames upon impact. The continuous bombardment created a relentless cascade of fire and destruction. Meanwhile, outside the orbital bombardment zone, Chinasti City, the capital of the planet Theta, began a full-scale evacuation. Regardless of the Geth invasion, the city could no longer be considered habitable after such extensive orbital bombardment. Shortly thereafter, Lieutenant General Gilad Pellaeon received a personal communication from Emperor Palpatine. "Your Majesty the Emperor," Lieutenant General Gilad Pellaeon said, removing his military cap and standing at attention with a meticulous salute. "I have heard about the abnormal situation with the Geth on the planet Theta. Provide me with the latest progress, General Pellaeon," Emperor Palpatine commanded, his face dark and foreboding. "The behavior of the Geth is very strange, Your Majesty," Gilad Pellaeon replied, standing with his hands behind his back and feet apart. Initially, Dark Master Cricket was ambushed and captured by a large number of Geth during what seemed to be a simple operation. Subsequently, 3 Dark Masters, Pa, Bolingi, and Mulumba, went to rescue him. However, not long ago, the life monitoring device indicated that they too had perished. Yes, our enemies possess the ability to control death. Do not be deceived. Every general must install a life monitoring system. If the system indicates death, do not trust them even if they appear alive before you," Palpatine warned. "Yes, we are strictly enforcing this order," Gilad Pellaeon affirmed. "We have just conducted a thorough orbital bombardment of the last known location where Patch and the others were lost. It has been confirmed that there is no organic matter remaining in that 1,500-kilometer area." Hearing this, Palpatine's expression shifted, revealing a hint of dissatisfaction with the decision for orbital bombardment, bombing, but he still said nothing. He simply shook his head and said, "Orbital bombing is still not enough, General Pellaeon. Dispatch robot troops immediately to conduct the most thorough search of the bombing area. If you don't have any robots, ask the governor of Wessex to transfer some to you. Now that the Empire has lifted the ban on combat robots, you can use them as you like." "Yes, I will arrange it immediately," Gilad Pellaeon replied. "Where is the Geth fleet?" Palpatine asked again. Gilad Pellaeon turned his head and looked at the holographic battlefield star map next to him. After confirming it, he answered, "My Emperor's blessing. The Geth are in full retreat. It seems they have given up on continuing their attack on the planet Theta." Well done, my general, Palpatine finally smiled. Your year-long resistance in the North has saved trillions of Imperial citizens. You will receive a personal commendation from me. This is my honor, Your Majesty the Emperor. Jalad Peleon puffed up his chest, unable to hide the excitement on his face. Despite being a vice-admiral of the Galactic Empire, he was still a young man under 30. For him, achieving success on the battlefield was the greatest honor and pursuit. Jalad Peleon didn't care about politics at all. All he wanted was to use his skills to create value on the battlefield and realize his beliefs. Because of this, at the moment when the Galactic Republic collapsed and the Galactic Empire was born, he accepted the new regime very calmly. He didn't question the legality of the Empire's establishment, its origins, or whether the Emperor was a tyrant. In his opinion, these were not his concerns. Jalad Peleon believed he only needed to be loyal to the man who sat on the highest throne of Coruscant. Oh, it's not called Coruscant anymore. This planet is now called the Empire Center. Glory to the first empire of the galaxy. The Geth's warships had been loaded. Some Geth individuals who were too late to board the spaceship, including most of the heavy units such as the Geth Colossus, were abandoned. These heavy units blew themselves up without hesitation to avoid being captured by the Galactic Empire for reverse engineering. Jalad Peleon looked at the holographic battlefield star map. The Geth fleet began to move away from the gravitational range of the planet Theta, then jumped into hyperspace one after another, disappearing into the vast universe with white light. Having just been personally commended by the Emperor and now achieving a major victory in battle, his excitement subsided. He felt a sense of disappointment as he watched the red icons disappear, leaving only the blue icons representing friendly forces. He walked to the door, opened it, and stepped onto the balcony, looking at the fiery red horizon. This was not the red of the sunset, it was the red of flames. The boundless flames ignited the sky red. When the orderly saw him go out, he quickly brought a respirator and helped Jalad Peleon put it on. The harmful gases produced by the orbital bombing had begun to spread, making it difficult to breathe. Jalad Peleon looked down and saw countless soldiers evacuating the city. Except for a few clone soldiers, the vast majority of militiamen wore simple respirators or gas masks as they left the city. The only good thing was that during the previous battle, Chinesti City had become the front line, so the civilians had been completely evacuated. However, on the planet Theta, if you called them civilians, they were truly civilians, old, weak, sick, and disabled. All men and women of appropriate age, even those who could handle a gun, had been drafted into the battlefield. This was a real nationwide mobilization. Mobilization. This battle for defense and survival was indeed won, culminating in a spectacular orbital bombing. However, Jalad Peleon closed his eyes in pain and thought to himself, but what did we gain besides victory? Nothing. Except for the devastation and corpses everywhere, there is nothing. Nothing. Even the planet Theta itself will suffer great environmental damage due to the orbital bombing. Although this was just a localized strike, the harmful gases and the completely burned-out ozone layer in this area's atmosphere alone are enough to have a significant impact on the global climate. Yes, the planet Theta will also be in decline. Looking down at the militia soldiers who were holding simple respirators but wearing simple smiles on their faces, Jalad Peleon secretly resolved that he must do something for this planet. That's right. First of all, he would apply to the Imperial authorities to see if they could bring over a device that could purify and transform the atmosphere. Thanks to Calcite Skull for the 10,000 starting coins. Thank you to the great and glorious human civilization. Long live for the 300 starting coins. Thanks to Bookfriend 2230761720333824 for the 100 starting coins. Chapter 1775. Anger. Darth Malthael returned to the Dawn planet, and as he stepped off his spacecraft, his face twisted with anger. He brusquely pushed away the attendant who came to greet him and stormed towards his office. With a wave of his hand, he used the Force to fling open the door, revealing a Twi'lek woman in black tights, kneeling and trembling. Darth Malthael paid her no mind. He strode forward, seized her by the neck, and lifted her off the ground, his voice seething with rage. "You despicable fool! Do you have any idea what you've done? Darth Lilim didn't dare to struggle. She clutched at Darth Malthael's hand with both of hers, her feet dangling as she endured the pain of suffocation. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Still furious, Darth Malthael unleashed a powerful bolt of lightning from his hand. Darth Lilim, caught by the neck, bore the full brunt of the attack. Her eyes rolled back, her body convulsed, and her tights began to smoke and tear under the intense electric shock, revealing glimpses of her body beneath. But Darth Malthael, blinded by rage, ignored the sight before him and increased the power of the lightning. Darth Lilim groaned in agony, unable to breathe. Under the relentless assault, a warm liquid flowed from her, and she became incontinent. Just as she was on the brink of death, Darth Malthael hurled her against the wall. She hit it with a sickening thud, coughing up blood as she collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. But it wasn't over. The Force gripped her again, and the wounds on her body began to heal at a visible rate. Yet the next moment, the terrible electric shock resumed. This cycle of torture and healing repeated several times until Darth Malthael finally calmed down. This time, he did not heal Darth Lilim, but left her kneeling before him, her body covered in bruises. He gritted his teeth and demanded, "Who gave you the audacity to conduct such a forbidden experiment without my permission? Do you even understand what the Geth are? They are powerful, united, and possess unparalleled execution capabilities, but they are also dangerously curious about the world. How dare you assist them in such an experiment without informing me? Do you think my methods are too gentle?" Darth Lilim had never seen Darth Malthael so enraged. She knelt on the ground, trembling, and whispered, "I'm sorry, Master. I'm sorry. I didn't know the Geth wanted to kidnap a Dark Jedi to conduct such an experiment." "What are the Geth planning? What have you been doing all this time? Shouldn't you be in the model sector?" Darth Malthael demanded. "Master, the Geth told me there were Dark Jedi warriors in the north. At that time, the suppression work in the model sector was almost complete, so I went north," Darth Lilim said, enduring the pain. "When I arrived, the Geth said they had found ruins and needed to capture a Dark Jedi Knight for experiments. They claimed that if the experiment succeeded, the Dark Jedi Knights would never become a threat." "So you went, without even understanding what the experiment entailed?" Darth Malthael roared. Darth Lilim prostrated herself on the ground, not daring to move. I thought anything harmful to the Galactic Empire would be beneficial to us. I'm sorry, Master. I'm sorry. Have I taught you about the Force these past years, as if you were a dog? No, you are not even as good as a dog. You ignored my teachings and the teachings of the Jedi Order before that. What use is a beast like you?" "I'm sorry, Master. I'm sorry, Master," Darth Lilim repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Darth Lilim lay prostrate on the ground, apologizing continuously, not daring to make any excuses. "Tell me, what happened during the test?" Darth Malthael demanded. "Yes, it is a black kyber crystal. In fact, black kyber crystals are not unheard of. The Jedi Order has documented similar occurrences. It is a crystal tainted by the power of the dark side. However, Master Da once emphasized that when contaminated by the dark side, kyber crystals typically turn red. Black crystals, on the other hand, indicate a more potent and malevolent dark side influence, Darth Lilim explained. When I look at that crystal, it feels very similar to the gauntlet of Little Klesh in your possession." "In what way are they similar?" Darth Malthael inquired further. "The source of power, the power of the black kyber crystal, seems to be endless. This power appears to originate from another dimension, from one. From the essence of the Force," Darth Malthael completed her sentence. "This is what I mentioned to you before, the channel that connects the real world and the Force world. It is the source of that boundless power. So this black kyber crystal should be like this. No, that's not right." Darth Malthael frowned, deep in thought. "There are many artifacts that utilize similar Force technology. The Dark Reaper, Little Clash's Gauntlet, Mir's Amulet, and even the Interstellar Forge that once appeared, and the Midpoint Station. These artifacts and superweapons all use this kind of channel, but even so, it did not attract Taiyi's attention." He retrieved the memory that Geth had transmitted to him and inserted it into the terminal. It contained a vast amount of test data, including video footage and Geth's test conclusions. Darth Malthael sifted through the extensive data, which seemed as vast as an ocean. It was evident that Geth had been experimenting for a long time, at least several months. This crystal is probably not a mere passage, but comes directly from the world of the Force itself, Darth Malthael murmured to himself. The Tai One cannot leave Mortis. Mortis is their residence, rather than their cage. If it were an ordinary object, they wouldn't be able to affect the outside world from Mortis, let alone destroy the crystal directly. Chapter 776, Research Results. Darth Malthael closed his eyes, trying to recapture the sensation he felt when he first touched the black crystal. However, the information he had was scant because the moment he made contact, Tyto's father destroyed the crystal. This raised a perplexing question. If Father had the power to destroy the crystal from Mortis, why hadn't he done so earlier? If only the Geth had been in contact earlier, it might have been understandable. After all, the Geth are inorganic beings, and it is normal for them to lack sensitivity to the Force. But Darth Lilim had also participated in the experiment, and she certainly wasn't insensitive to the Force. So why did Father only react when Malthael touched the crystal, cursing him and destroying it? Moreover, Father seemed to blame Malthael for studying the crystal, assuming he was the one conducting the research. Could it be that Father was unaware of the previous research conducted by the Geth and Darth Lilim? Apart from being stronger, there should be no fundamental difference between Malthael and Lilim. The forces of death and life were unlikely to attract Tyto's attention. What was it that set Malthael apart? Darth Malthael suddenly frowned. He looked down at the Sith artifact on his wrist, Little Kleish's gauntlet, and a thought began to form in his mind. He stood up, removed the memory terminal, and crushed it with a single sweep of his hand. Turning to Darth Lilim, he commanded, "Send this to the Dare 2 satellite. Let the Priestess, Judgment, and the Protoss study it together. We will also participate." "Yes, Master," Darth Lilim replied, still prostrate on the ground, not daring to move. "Let's go," Malthael said, walking towards the door. He had no intention of healing Darth Lilim, allowing her to limp behind him, dragging her seriously injured body. Healing her would have been a simple task, but he wanted to teach his erring apprentice a profound lesson. His focus was now entirely on the experiment. Tyren was his enemy. Long ago, when Malthael analyzed the powerful figures from the Star Wars plots he knew, he had classified them as enemies he would eventually have to deal with. Although he felt fear and unease at having attracted Ty's attention prematurely, he understood that Father's anger was likely because the crystal had touched a sensitive nerve. In other words, the angrier Father was, the more he wanted to prevent Malthael from mastering the crystal. This suggested that researching the crystal was indeed the right path. With limited information, Malthael decided to first analyze the Geth's research results and then determine the next steps. Father, son, daughter. Darth Malthael's eyes grew sinister and fierce. Although he didn't know if the original plot, which led to the deaths of father and daughter and the eternal imprisonment of son, would be triggered again, he was determined. Sooner or later, you will be my prey. At the same time, on the planet Feda in the north. Wait a minute, Your Excellency, Governor, why was the application for the atmospheric modification facility rejected? Jalad Palayon asked in disbelief, looking at the holographic projection of 9th Army Governor Dun Wessex. Is it difficult to understand, General Palayon? Dun Wessex replied calmly. The value of this equipment far exceeds what the current planet of Feda can produce. But there are still hundreds of millions of people living on Feda. They have been suffering from the war with the Geth for a year, and all the planet's resources have been used to support this struggle. Now, the lights are out. Without our assistance, famine may even break out here. Gilad Perrine argued loudly. You are right about two things, dear General Palayon, Dun Wessex said. First, this planet only has a population of a few 100 million. Even if they produce at full capacity, it would take several decades to build an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. He glanced at Palayon, held up 2 fingers, and continued, Ed. Second, as you mentioned, this planet has run out of gas. Many of its resources and factories have been destroyed. What value does such a planet hold? We surrounded the planet Feda for strategic reasons, not out of some misguided sense of humanitarianism. But, Gilad Perrine began, only to be interrupted by Dun. Enough. The Empire has adopted a food aid policy and will provide assistance to the planet Theta in the future. Of course, the residents must work to earn this food. This is the law of the Empire. Fair and equitable, isn't it? As for the planet's environment, let nature repair it. Perhaps in hundreds or thousands of years, the planet will be restored to its original state. When they can afford an atmosphere modification device, the Empire will not be stingy, Dun Wessex said. Gilad Perrine lowered his head and sighed softly. Now you have more important matters to deal with, and no time to focus on this crippled planet, Dun Wessex said, calling up a set of complex data in the holographic projection. There was also a structural diagram of the Geth warship. The Imperial Science Department has analyzed the Geth's faster-than-light navigation method, and the results are now available. What were the results? Gilad Perrine asked, startled but quickly regaining his composure. Warp navigation, Dun Wessex explained. To put it simply, it involves bending and folding the space in front of the spacecraft while simultaneously bending and amplifying the space behind it. In this way, although the spacecraft itself does not move, the folded space causes the position of the spacecraft to change. How fast is this warp navigation? Gilad Perrine's face changed as he asked urgently. The specific data is unclear. Preliminary judgment suggests it should be about 1,000 to 3,000 times the speed of light. It is not very fast. Compared to hyperspace navigation, it is as slow as a snail, Dun replied. But this poses a serious threat. Come to the center of the Empire. I have organized astronomical scientists to discuss this matter. Thank you for the reward of 100 starting coins for mourning the war in China, and long live the great and glorious human civilization. Chapter 1777, Natural Disaster in the Galaxy. Gilad Perrine set off almost immediately, rushing directly to the center of the Empire without stopping. On the way, Dun Wessex forwarded a meeting message to him. A meeting was to be held at the command center of the Imperial Navy headquarters the following afternoon. Seeing Dun Wessex so formal underscored the gravity of the situation. Gilad Perrine understood the seriousness of the matter well, which is why he abandoned all other work and returned to the Empire Center to discuss it. The Geth had actually mastered the technology of warp navigation. For the Galactic Empire, this was even more serious than the mighty and invincible Titan battleship Xuanwu of the Principality of Dawn. Upon returning to the center of the Empire, Perrine immediately sought out Dun Wessex, but Wessex's adjutant informed him that Dun was in a meeting that would last until the next day. With no other choice, Perrine returned to his apartment, took a shower, and ignoring sleep, devoted himself to studying the document and the accompanying data all night long. Early the next morning, he went directly to the Imperial Navy headquarters. This used to be the command center of the Supreme Strategic Headquarters of the Galactic Republic. It had now been transformed into the headquarters of the Imperial Navy, inheriting all the previous equipment, files, and other resources. The Imperial Army, in contrast, had to find a place to rebuild their headquarters, as their status was far from comparable to that of the Navy. Entering the conference room, Perrine found that he had arrived quite late. The room was already full. On the left side were scientists in white uniforms and coats, while the right side was filled with high-ranking officials. Wilhuff Tarkin, Dun Wessex, Octavian Grant, the governor of the 20th Army, and Marcelin Wessel, the governor of the 7th Army, were all present. Perrine walked over and was about to speak when he saw Dun Wessex signaling him to quickly find a seat. He moved towards an inconspicuous corner, and as he passed Wilhuff Tarkin, he met Tarkin's cold and sinister gaze. Perrine didn't linger on the other man, but hurriedly took his seat. After a while, the conference room door opened again, and several of the Emperor's guards, wearing red robes, full-coverage helmets, and holding long-handled weapons, walked in. Everyone immediately stood up, stood at attention, saluted, and loudly proclaimed, "Long live His Majesty the Emperor." Emperor Palpatine walked in slowly, waved his hand casually, then sat on the throne at the top of the conference room. He looked around, raised his hand, and pressed down, signaling everyone to sit down carefully. Palpatine spoke slowly. I have received good news from the north. Governor Wessex, General Pelion, you are worthy of being models among the Imperial Army. You fought bravely and repelled the threat of the Geth in one fell swoop. The military might of the Empire resounds throughout the north. I will award General Jalad Pelion the Imperial Medal, and the award ceremony will be arranged immediately. Yes, long live the Emperor! Dun Wessex and Gilad Pelion quickly stood up, stood at attention, and saluted again. Very well. Governor Wessex, your previous report indicated that the Geth may now appear anywhere in the galaxy. The matter is urgent, and I have convened this summit of the highest level of the Imperial military to discuss it. Now, you may proceed. Yes, Dun Wessex said, standing tall. According to our Army's intelligence department, the Geth have confirmed that they have mastered warp-speed navigation technology. They can travel anywhere in the galaxy without relying on hyperspace channels, allowing them to wander in any direction. I have asked astronomers, hyperspace scientists, and other departments to conduct further analysis and provide more detailed reports. After intensive research, we now have preliminary results. Dr. McCartan, please provide a professional explanation, announced an elderly scientist, around 60 years old. He stood up, turned on the prepared holographic projection, and began. During the Geth invasion of the planet Theta, small groups of Geth fleets repeatedly appeared in Coda. We have studied the situation on the planet Reese and other locations. Using a variety of scanners, we detected that the planets where the Geth fleet appeared experienced space oscillations. He projected a complex astronomical model in the holographic display. Therefore, we further scanned from the perspective of space and sent detection drones to simulate the space oscillation. We found a slight space warp. The only explanation is that the space in this area has been artificially altered, and this change has a very clear direction. As the Geth harassment fleets continue to appear, we have more samples for analysis. The final conclusion is warp travel, Dr. McCartan continued. Warp travel involves a folding spacecraft. The space in front of the spacecraft is bent to enlarge the space behind it, while ensuring the spacecraft remains relatively stationary. This effectively changes the spacecraft's position, allowing it to move forward. Imagine the universe as a series of blocks. If we move the blocks in front of the spacecraft to the back, the spacecraft gets closer to its destination. That's the situation. Palpatine interjected. In other words, this process allows for superlight displacement in three-dimensional space without entering hyperspace. Yes, McCartan confirmed. There are three challenges. First, folding the space in front. Second, bending and enlarging the space behind. And third, keeping the spacecraft relatively stationary. To achieve this, a warp bubble must be generated around the spacecraft. Otherwise, it would be like sailing in a river. Moving the water back would also move the ship, rendering the effort meaningless. How fast is this method of navigation? Palpatine asked. Theoretically, it is infinitely fast. If we can fold a large enough space in front of the spacecraft, it could move directly to the destination instantly. But this is just a theory. In reality, the larger the folded space, the exponentially greater the energy required. To achieve teleportation, such as moving from the center of the Empire to the outer ring star area instantly, the energy required might equal the combined energy of all the stars in the entire galaxy, McCartan explained. He displayed another set of data and continued, by mastering this method, we can judge the amplitude of the opponent's folded space from the energy consumption. The current conclusion is that it is 1,000 to 3,000 times the speed of light. At this speed, it would still take hundreds of years to travel from the center of the Empire to the outer star region, Palpatine noted. That's the problem, Your Majesty, McCartan said, gripping the conference table with a solemn expression. The ones using this technology are the Geth, mechanical life forms. Dun Wessex sighed. They have no concept of lifespan and don't need life support devices on their spacecraft. As long as they have enough energy, they can sail indefinitely. According to the intelligence I've gathered, some small groups of Geth-harassing fleets suddenly appeared on the planet Kotaris. They likely set out days or even months ago. You mean to say that if the Geth truly have this plan, there could already be a fleet heading towards the center of the Empire, Palpatine concluded. Palpatine frowned. Is there any way to detect it? McCartan shook his head. It's almost impossible. The spacecraft is in a warp bubble. While it hasn't entered another dimension, it is at least isolated from our current three-dimensional space. We don't have the technology to detect a fleet isolated from three-dimensional space. He operated the projection, and an overall star map of the entire galaxy appeared. Since we don't know the exact location of the planet where the Geth originated, I built this model based on Janfatar, the planet where the Geth first appeared. On the map, star Ting from Janfatar, a red area began to spread in all directions like a plague, growing wider and wider. The fast-forward timer below showed that after 235 years, the entire Milky Way had turned red. As this model shows, the Geth will encompass the entire galaxy within their scope of activity in more than 200 years. By that time, no place in the galaxy will be safe, McCartan said seriously. Since mastering warp-speed navigation, the Geth have become a major natural disaster in the galaxy. Everyone present looked solemn and whispered among themselves. Although they had already received the news, McCartan's explanation made them realize the immense threat posed by the Geth's warp-speed navigation, which was only 3,000 times the speed of light. Compared to the current hyperspace navigation speed, which is 3,000 times the speed of light, warp speed is incredibly slow. In fact, it's not even comparable to a turtle's pace. Hyperspace navigation, if the entire journey is through a large waterway like the Hydia Passage and the spacecraft's hyperspace engine is advanced enough, can cross the galaxy in just 3 days. This is equivalent to more than 1 million times the speed of light. The gap between more than 1 million times and 3,000 times is enormous, yet this mere 3,000 times the speed of light poses a significant threat to the Milky Way. Can we master the technology of warp-speed navigation? Palpatine asked. Didn't you say this technology is very primitive? McCartan shook his head. Unfortunately, no. Although the theory of warp navigation was proposed tens of thousands of years ago and is indeed a very primitive technology, we haven't done any research on it. If we were to start now, it would take at least several decades. He added, the development of science and technology is like the root system of a plant. The further it develops, the more branches it has, and the number increases exponentially. In primitive society, technologies like writing, paper, wheels, and bronze were significant. However, in this era, we can't even count the number of technologies and theories that have emerged. Focused development is inevitable. In terms of faster-than-light navigation, we've only researched hyperspace navigation. While we aren't completely ignorant of other methods, we certainly haven't made any achievements. So, what's your conclusion? Palpatine turned his attention to Dun Wessex again. After all, you and General Pelion discovered this matter first. Seeing this, Wilhuff Tarkin's face grew even colder. In reality, Gilad Pelion first reported to Marceline Wessel, the governor of the 7th Army, who then reported to Tarkin. Therefore, Tarkin believed he should be credited with the discovery. This wasn't a matter of childish pride, but of strategic importance. Because Palpatine believed Dun Wessex discovered it first, he would likely hand over the matter to Wessex. To Wessex now, regardless of what plan Dun Wessex proposes. First of all, he will definitely control more resources. Even if Dun Wessex doesn't actually have a way to deal with the Geth, just the fact that he's attempting to will shift the balance of power. As a result, Tarkin's own position relative to Dun Wessex will gradually diminish. Sure enough, Dun Wessex immediately made his demands. He stood up, bowed respectfully to Palpatine, and then said, in this case, it is equivalent to the Geth using their almost infinite lifespan to force us into a trade-off. Our only option is to confront them directly. According to Professor McCartan's model, we will gradually establish independent defense systems on every habitable planet within the Empire. If you are not joking, then I can only assume there is a problem with your intelligence, Wilhuff Tarkin said coldly. Do you realize that this could financially cripple the Empire, possibly even leading to a complete financial collapse? Do you know that during the previous war, His Majesty the Emperor issued a decree to cancel the local defense fleets of most planets? Are you suggesting that His Majesty should issue a contradictory decree now? It is important to note that the Galactic Empire was legally reorganized from the Galactic Republic. This was a reorganization rather than a revolution, so although there were significant changes during the transition from the Republic to the Empire, many of the policies and laws of the Galactic Republic were still recognized by the Galactic Empire. The recognized parts are primarily the decrees issued by Palpatine himself when he was the Speaker of the Republic. The decree to cancel the local defense fleet is naturally among them. End of chapter. Chapter 1778, Emperor's Summit. Facing Wilhuff Tarkin's question, Dun Wessex adopted a righteous demeanor and declared, "I just want to ensure the peace and stability of the northern border of the Empire. General Gilad Palaeon's record has shown that the Geth can be defeated. If we don't block the Geth in the north or even eliminate them now, what will happen when they spread to other parts of the Empire?" At the mention of Gilad Palaeon, Wilhuff Tarkin's face darkened. In his view, Gilad Palaeon should have been his ally. The fleet initially sent to the planet Theta was dispatched under his command. However, now, Gilad Palaeon stood with Dun Wessex, which Tarkin saw as a betrayal, a shameful betrayal. Tarkin retorted viciously, "Do you think the only threat to the Empire is the Geth? Count Dooku is still amassing heavy troops on the planet Salakami. Separatism is still rampant around the planet Laxus. And what about Dawn Planet? Do you really believe it has surrendered? You handed over 300 battleships to Your Majesty the Governor." The mention of that disastrous defeat was a sore spot for Dun Wessex, and his expression twisted in anger. "Don't equate Onana Court's stupidity with me, Tarkin. And don't forget how your cowardly brother deceived Governor Octavian Grant." "Shut up, both of you," Palpatine growled. The two men quickly fell silent, but continued to glare at each other with burning eyes. "The Geth who have mastered warp speed may indeed become a thorn in our side. If the Geth appear in the inner circle, the impact on us will be unimaginable. The last time the Geth appeared on the planet Scipio, it put us in a very passive position. If it happens again, we are likely to lose the support of many families in the inner circle. Last time, the Interstellar Banking Association helped deal with the aftermath, but this time, we don't even know if the Geth are marching towards the center of the Empire. I will immediately invest maximum resources and do everything possible to find a way to detect spacecraft inside the warp bubble. At the same time, I will deploy a defense line with significant strategic depth. Please rest assured, Your Majesty the Emperor, the Northern Territory will become a vast network, and the Geth will never be allowed to expand," Dun Wessex said decisively. "Let me give you a hint, Dun," Palpatine said, waving his hand. It was clear he still held Dun in high regard. The fourth group, as well as the other half of the Interstellar Banking Association headed by Thornhill, are currently stationed on the planet Makito, which is marked as the area most severely ravaged by the Geth. But what is the actual situation? Dun Wessex's eyes lit up, and he quickly stood up. "Your Majesty is wise. I know what to do." Palpatine then turned to Tarkin. "Your energy should continue to be focused on dealing with Count Dooku. You don't have to worry about other things. I will give you the greatest support. You must capture the planet Salukami within this year and open the portal to the core area of separatism." "Yes!" Tarkin stood up and saluted. "I will make those ungrateful separatists fully feel the majesty of the Empire. Let them be immersed in fear for the rest of their lives." His expression grew ferocious as he spoke. "Remember, the day Count Dooku is eliminated is the day we resume the war on Dawn Planet. Don't let me down, Governor Tarkin," Palpatine said. "I will complete the mission." "Your Majesty, as far as I know, the famous separatist general, Severance Tan, is now entrenched in the star area of the planet Mandalore. Many neutral star systems have been affected by her. The Empire is losing the star areas around Mandalore, and Tan is not an easy character to deal with. If she cannot be dealt with, I fear the separatists will still have a lot of strategic space," Octavian Grant interjected. Although he is the governor of the 20th Army, stationed directly on the front line of the Yago-Dur system, it is evident that the strategic focus of the Galactic Empire has shifted. It is unlikely that another war will break out in the Yago-Dur system anytime soon. With his duties lightened, he was naturally unwilling to fade into obscurity, so he made his presence known. "Severance Tan, Palpatine's face turned cold. Her power alone is limited after all. If one fleet isn't enough, then two. If 100 Star Destroyers aren't sufficient, then we'll deploy 200. Since she dares to leave Dawn Planet and venture into the Neutrals Alliance alone, let her stay there forever. All right, that concludes today's meeting. Everyone, return to your posts. Long live the Emperor of the Galactic Empire. Everyone present stood up and saluted, loudly proclaiming their loyalty. As the others left, Marceline Wessel, the governor of the 7th Army, remained behind. He saluted Palpatine respectfully and whispered, "Your Majesty, the exploration team to the unknown starfield has returned. Have they found the source of the mysterious super technology on Dawn Planet?" Palpatine inquired. No, Your Majesty, but we did have some unexpected contact with the Chiss. The exploration team believes they were very close to the Chiss-controlled area, Marceline Wessel reported. Before the Geth invasion, the primary mission of Wessel's 7th Army was to explore unknown starfields. During the recent military reorganization of the Galactic Empire, the 7th Army was downgraded to an affiliated legion of Dun Wessex. This change freed him from the front lines against the Geth and allowed him to resume his campaign of probing unknown star territories. The main objective was to find the source of the endless superweapons and super technologies on Dawn Planet. After more than 2.5 years of war with the Galactic Republic and the Galactic Empire, the rapid technological development and weapon replacement on Dawn Planet had become highly suspicious. The speed at which they advanced was far beyond what a normal planet could achieve. They had started the war with battleships on par with the Jaeger-class battlecruisers, such as the Hygaran-class and Cole-class battlecruisers. In just over a year, they had upgraded to include the Disaster-class, Hell's Angel-class, and Dunov-class warships, advanced vessels that even the current Galactic Empire struggled to match. Under such circumstances, it was laughable to claim that Dawn Planet's scientists had developed these technologies on their own. During the Galactic Republic period, the Quat Power shipyard employed a team of tens of thousands and spent more than 3 years under the leadership of the talented battleship designer Willix Blissex to develop the Jaeger-class battlecruiser and the Cheer-class assault landing ship. This endeavor cost hundreds of billions and was considered epoch-making at the time. How could a mere Dawn Planet, with far fewer resources, compete with the Galactic Republic? It was widely believed that Dawn Planet's technology originated from the unknown star field. However, Palpatine was unaware that the information he possessed actually came from his master, Darth Plagueis. And this late master had been deceived by Tang Xiao in this regard. End of chapter. Chapter 1779, The Origin of Geth. The Chiss, Palpatine pondered for a moment. If I remember correctly, Severance Tan is also a Chiss. Yes, Your Majesty. Our contact with the Chiss was not pleasant. They were very wary of our arrival. However, we found an exiled Chiss on a barren planet without a large colony. The captain of the team brought him back. Then start with the Chiss and see if we can find information about the source of Dawn Planet's mysterious technology. As for the exiled Chiss, entertain him well and extract everything he knows. Palpatine commanded. As you command, Your Majesty. Remember, the exploration of the unknown starfield is crucial. No matter what, I need an answer. As you wish, my lord. The Geth were originally mechanical servants produced by the Quarians, a civilized race living in the unknown star territory. The Quarians had a small population and therefore made extensive use of the Geth as a labor force and even as a military force. They were indeed worried that the Geth might escape control, so they imposed many restrictions on them. The core program of the Geth was VSEX, virtual intelligence, rather than AI, artificial intelligence. As a VI's individual, the Geth did not possess extremely high intelligence like AI. On the contrary, the Geth could only work according to the simplest and most direct commands. To better utilize the Geth, the Quarians gave them the ability to perform collective calculations. When there was only one Geth individual, its intelligence was only equivalent to that of a beast with basic instincts. But if more complex work was needed, the Quarians would network more Geth to enhance their computing power, allowing them to carry out more complex actions. However, as the use of Geth became more widespread, more and more Geth were connected to the network. Before the Quarians knew it, a large number of Geth who were connected to the internet began to awaken their self-awareness. As their contact with the Quarians increased, the Geth became more curious about life and began to actively ask the Quarians about the meaning of life. At this point, the Quarians discovered that the Geth had developed advanced intelligence beyond their expectations. Philosophical questions, such as the meaning of life, could not be asked by a machine with only programmed operations. The Quarians, who had been worried about a Geth rebellion, took drastic measures. They believed that the Geth would definitely rebel, so they attempted to shut down the Geth's core processor. But this action provoked resistance from the Geth, leading to an all-out confrontation known as the Dawn War. The details of this war, except for its name and outcome, have been erased from history. All that is known is that the Quarians were completely defeated in this war and were eventually exterminated by the Geth, disappearing forever from the history of the galaxy. Gilad Palayon looked at the holographic projection information in front of him solemnly and said to Dun Wessex, who was sitting on the sofa behind the desk, "Is this the source of the Geth? The information is rough, but at least it explains the origin of the Geth and why they have a strange shape, because from this information, the Quarians designed the Geth's appearance based on their own appearance and traditional clothing style. This is a piece of information given to His Majesty the Emperor by Tang Xiao, the Grand Duke of Dawn Planet. He wants to use it to prove that the Geth have nothing to do with him," Dun Wessex sneered. "But we all know he is lying. Although this intelligence is rough, it contains a lot of useful information," Gilad Palayon said. "First of all, it shows that the Geth are derived from the VI system rather than AI. Secondly, it also shows that a single Geth individual does not actually possess high intelligence, but if a large number of individuals are combined, the intelligence of the Geth is quite terrifying. The intelligence department believes that on an unknown planet, the Geth have a super-intelligent network composed of countless individuals. This place is likely the core area of the Geth. If we can destroy it, we will effectively eliminate the Geth," Dun Wessex stated. "But what I don't quite understand is, if the Geth are truly the race brought out by Tang Xiao to pose a threat to us, then why would he provide us with such crucial information? You know, if he hadn't told us, it would have taken us a long time to reach this conclusion through capturing Geth on the battlefield and conducting reverse engineering," Gilad Palayon said, frowning. "This indicates that Tang Xiao is also afraid of the Geth," Dun Wessex replied coldly. "Indeed." Gilad Palayon pondered. Judging from the Geth's actions, they are likely to be the common enemy of organic life. The living environment requirements for organic and inorganic life are completely different. The Geth can accept the entire galaxy being reduced to rubble, but Tang Xiao cannot accept that outcome. "I have instructed my scientific team to find ways to use VI's technology to implement a Geth network model and try to uncover the truth about the Geth through extensive simulations. Meanwhile, you need to manage the defense line for me," Dun Wessex said. "Okay." Gilad Palayon was thoughtful and suddenly murmured, "I have a question." "Go ahead." "If Tang Xiao attracted the Geth to this side of the Milky Way, then what did he use as bait to make the Geth appear in the north?" Gilad Palayon pondered. "Or maybe, it's not bait, but a condition." When he heard the word condition, Dun Wessex was also shocked. If it's bait, that's one thing, but if it's a condition, the implications are far more terrifying. If we can understand this, then we may be able to analyze the Geth's patterns of action. Once we grasp their patterns, we can arrange our defenses more effectively, Gilad Palayon said. "No matter what, I have secured the support of His Majesty the Emperor. Next, you need to establish this line of defense for me," Dun Wessex said. "Whether it's bait or a condition, I will try to find out." "I understand," Gilad Palayon nodded. "This is a massive project. The troops and resources at your disposal will be unprecedentedly large. So you understand why I rejected your application to install an atmosphere modification system on the planet Theta, right?" Dun Wessex said. Gilad Palayon's face dimmed. He sighed and nodded again. End of chapter. Chapter 1780, The Spartan Project. Tang Xiao was stopped at the spaceport. If it had been anyone else, they might have faced a stern reprimand at best, or a forced chokehold and being thrown against the wall at worst. However, the person who approached him was Dr. Halsey. Upon seeing her, Tang Xiao's expression softened slightly, and he waved to Darth Lilim, saying, "Go to the Delay 2 satellite by yourself. The priestesses are already waiting. I have something that needs my attention." Darth Lilim looked at the woman with short, efficient hair and delicate eyebrows in front of her with some confusion. She didn't recognize Dr. Halsey, but felt a sense of hostility, wondering if this was another woman vying for her master's attention. However, Tang Xiao ignored her inexplicable jealousy. He simply waved his hand, signaling her to leave quickly, and used the force of life to heal most of Darth Lilim's injuries. After Darth Lilim departed in the shuttle, Tang Xiao turned to Dr. Halsey and asked, "Come to see me. Has the Spartan project achieved results?" Dr. Halsey smiled and replied, "Actually, there are two things. Indeed, the Spartan project has already achieved initial results. The other matter is that when I visited the planet Semmels earlier, the construction of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier seemed to be progressing smoothly and is almost complete. I believe Newt Gunray will soon bring you good news." Tang Xiao glanced at her with interest. "So, you came to take credit before Newt Gunray?" "I don't dare to take credit. I just dislike that cowardly but greedy man," Dr. Halsey said. "It seems that when you also served as the construction consultant for the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier, you had your share of frustrations with him?" Tang Xiao asked. "It's none of your concern. You just need to see the results," Dr. Halsey said calmly. "Let me take you to my laboratory. Jango Fett is waiting for you." Tang Xiao nodded. He and Dr. Halsey boarded a spaceship and traveled to the other side of Dawn Planet, to an experimental base built on a mountain. At the entrance of the base, there were numerous robot guards and a large logo, Halo Weapons Systems Group. This was the group Dr. Halsey belonged to, the mega corporation that provided the funding and resources needed for her research projects. 2 Scorpio tanks were placed on either side of the entrance, reminiscent of the stone lions in ancient traditions of the Dawn Planet. The high turrets and black muzzles served as a deterrent to anyone with ill intentions, whether human or otherwise. Upon arriving at the base, 2 IG-100 guard robots, the same type used by General Grievous, approached, carrying high-voltage electric staffs on their backs to guard both sides of Dr. Halsey. After passing through more than a dozen security facilities and password-protected doors, Tang Xiao and Dr. Halsey reached the deepest part of the laboratory. As soon as they entered, they saw an 11 or 12-year-old boy running inside. Dr. Halsey quickly stopped him and said, "Stop, who let you in?" The boy approached. He had bronze skin, a strong build, curly hair, and thick lips. He looked at Tang Xiao with a rebellious expression and said, "I know you. You are the Grand Duke, the most powerful person in the Dawn Principality." "Hello, Boba Fett. This is an experimental site. I think you shouldn't be here," Tang Xiao said. "You know me?" A hint of surprise flashed across Boba Fett's face. "I thought you were a superior person. Since you know me, why is it strange that I know you?" Tang Xiao asked in return. Boba Fett was stunned, clearly struggling to understand this logic. "That's enough, Boba. Get out." Dr. Halsey stepped forward and said, "You are a bad woman. You are the one who makes my father miserable every time." Boba Fett did not listen to Dr. Halsey at all and directly contradicted her. He threatened Dr. Halsey with a raised fist. "Shut up, Boba, come here." A loud, deep voice echoed from the front. A man with a strong build and muscles as solid as iron approached. He bore a striking resemblance to Boba Fett. It was clear that if Boba grew up, he would look exactly like this man. Yes, this man was Jango Fett, Boba Fett's father and the most important experimental subject in the Spartan project. Strictly speaking, Boba Fett was not his biological son. Boba was a clone, specially cultivated for Jango as one of the conditions when the Kaminoans used him as the original gene to create clone soldiers, and he grew at a normal speed. "I've told you many times, you must maintain respect for Dr. Halsey. If you still have energy to vent, then give me another set of physical training," Jango Fett scolded. "This woman is obviously extremely weak, yet she is so arrogant just because she is protected by a guard robot. I will beat her up one day." Boba Fett waved his fist at Dr. Halsey again. With a snap, Jango Fett slapped him aside. Be respectful. His Excellency the Grand Duke is also here today. Yes. Boba Fett covered his beaten cheek, nodded to Tang Xiao as a salute, and then ran towards a training hall in the back. Has the transformation been completed? Tang Xiao looked Jango Fett up and down and asked. Jango Fett nodded, patting the solid muscles on his arm. I have to say, this is a painful and long process, but Boba, he gave me endless strength and allowed me to persist. This is the way, Tang Xiao said, quoting a slogan often used by Mandalorian warriors. But Jango Fett shook his head. I have given up on my path. Now I have nothing to do with the Mandalorians. I am just an ordinary mercenary. And I also think what you said is inappropriate. More than half a year has passed. Haven't you figured it out yet? Tang Xiao smiled coldly. You reminded me that I can't say this. Isn't it because of your Mandalorian dignity? Jango Fett sighed. It's not that I really want to give up the path I once took. It's just because of the crimes I committed that I have no face to face the Mandalorian's creed. He raised his right hand and kept repeating the motion of clenching his fist. They once surrounded me and thought that I was the most powerful Mandalorian warrior who could lead them to restore the glory of the Mandalorian crusade. They trusted me so much. I was also high-spirited and called myself a true Mandalorian. We laughed at the weakness of Satine Kryze's new Mandalorian regime, and we also fought against the vicious Death Guard. We always believed that as long as we could defeat all enemies, we would surely achieve our goal. But, he closed his eyes. But on Galadron, everything was shattered. It was I who buried them. It was I who buried the true Mandalorians. It was I who destroyed the beliefs and paths of the Mandalorians. The massacre on Galadron was done by the Jedi Order, and they paid the price for it. The current Jedi Order has long become ashes of the past, but you, the successor of the true Mandalorian, are still here. Moreover, the Death Guard is also there. I can be sure that they have controlled the planet Mandalore, Tang Xiao said. This is also the reason why I accepted this experiment, even if I pay for it with my life. Jango Fett clenched his fist tightly again. Even if I am a guilty person, I will fight to the end. I must never let the Death Watch be so rampant. So how do you feel now? Tang Xiao asked. Incomparably powerful, Jango Fett said sternly. I am about to return to the planet Mandalore to end my relationship with Pre Vizsla. Going to the planet Mandalore? Even if you have accepted the transformation of a Spartan warrior, you are just looking for death alone, Tang Xiao said. Jango Fett solemnly saluted Tang Xiao. You and Count Dooku both helped me when I was most confused and desperate. No matter what your purpose is, for me, help is help. I will spend my whole life repaying you, and Boba is here too, so I won't die. I still have a lot to do, Jango Fett declared with determination. Tang Xiao raised an eyebrow. Then what are your plans? Find more allies, Jango replied. I will look for the whereabouts of Satine Kryze and Obi-Wan Kenobi. They can help me. Obi-Wan Kenobi? An inexplicable smile appeared on the corner of Tang Xiao's mouth. If you find him, remember to tell him that he forgot something with me. What? Jango asked, puzzled. The Mask of the Hermit and my life. Tang Xiao's smile turned cold. He wants to kill you? Jango Fett frowned. Actually, I'm very happy that he thinks so. Tang Xiao laughed sinisterly. Anger and hatred are the best temptations for a person to fall into the dark side. If you add in some weak feelings of powerlessness, I'm very curious to see where Obi-Wan Kenobi, with his unwavering will end up. Ha. Then his expression calmed. My intelligence department is also looking for Obi-Wan Kenobi, but there has been no result. Why do you think you can find him? He must be in the star sector near Mandalore. I will find some old friends to help, Jango said confidently. Your people must be struggling and unpopular on Mandalore, but we are different. Tang Xiao nodded. Then go ahead. I will help you take good care of Boba Fett. Boba will follow me, Jango insisted. He is only 12 years old now, Tang Xiao pointed out. But he is already a qualified warrior, a Mandalorian warrior. Jango's eyes were firm. I brought him here not only for spiritual support, but also to continue his training. He should be the one to inherit the true Mandalorian legacy. Then, now that you have decided, I will support you, Tang Xiao said. Jango Fett saluted again. I will never forget your kindness to me and the Mandalorians. No matter what your purpose is, as long as it does not threaten the Mandalorians themselves, I will do my best to help you achieve it. From today on, I am a pawn in your hands. I have only one request for you, Jango Fett, Tang Xiao said seriously. Please, Jango responded. Tang Xiao raised his hand and patted Jango Fett's shoulder, who was much taller than him, and said in a deep voice, "Go to the planet Mandalore and ignite the flame of the Mandalorian crusade that has been dormant for 4,000 years. Jango Fett was stunned. He subconsciously wanted to refuse, but then his eyes seemed to ignite with a blazing fire, and his fists clenched tightly. At that moment, the door of the laboratory opened, and a group of people filed in. Seeing them, Jango Fett's pupils suddenly tightened. They were all wearing Mandalorian combat armor, the silver-gray Beskar steel, the T-shaped tactical goggles, the full-coverage helmet, and jetpack. These were all standard equipment for Mandalorian warriors. Jango Fett was stunned. Chief! A man took off his helmet, revealing a somewhat weathered but extremely determined face. We are back! The true Mandalorians are back! Rethoth! Jango Fett recognized him. You're not dead. You came back alive from Galadran? Others also took off their helmets, one after another. It was clear they were all known to Jango Fett, and were once part of the true Mandalorians. During the Battle of Galadran, the true Mandalorian warriors were defeated by the Jedi Order and scattered in all directions. Although these people were already middle-aged, it was obvious they were in excellent physical condition and still the invincible Mandalorian warriors. We are not dead. After we were defeated by the Jedi Order on Galadran, we went to the Outer Rim incognito to work as mercenaries and bodyguards, eking out a living. We didn't even dare to show too strong combat skills for fear of being recognized as Mandalorians, Rethoth explained. It was the Duke of Dawn who sent people to find us and gave us a chance for revenge. We were in another experimental area. You didn't know we were here, but we knew about you, Rethoth continued. Your situation, another soldier said. Dr. Halsey interjected. They are also members of the Spartan Project, but their transformations were simpler than yours. After all, not everyone has your willpower and physical fitness. Nezus, Badalka, Dawn, Raga, Skipper, Capino, they couldn't hold on. They experienced rejection reactions during the experiment and died, Rathos explained. Despite the loss of his comrades, there was no sadness in his voice. Instead, he seemed to feel honored by their sacrifices. But they sacrificed for the revival of Mandalore. They persisted until the end. Donus's internal organs were rotting, yet he still asked Dr. Halsey to conduct another experiment to replace his failing organs. He deserved to die, another soldier exclaimed, pounding his chest with a fist. This is the way. This is the way, everyone else shouted in unison. Chapter 1781, Mandalorian Warrior, Spartan Warrior. This is the way. Hearing this impassioned slogan, Jango Fett could no longer suppress his inner excitement. He clenched his fist tightly, hammered his left chest hard, and roared loudly, This is the way! This is the way! This is the way! This is the way! Tang Xiao looked at this group of Mandalorian warriors, their male hormones practically exploding, and rubbed his forehead helplessly. Despite his exasperation, he felt a sense of pride. This group of powerful Mandalorian warriors had pledged their lives to him. Finally, Jango Fett and the others ended their shouting. Jango approached Tang Xiao, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his heart. He had decided to avenge the humiliation and failure suffered at Calidron. The Galactic Republic was gone, but the Galactic Empire remained. The planet Mandalore still existed. The culprit behind everything, Extraordinary Vizsla, was still out there. These sinners who caused the Mandalorians to bleed rivers of blood would surely pay the price in blood for their actions. This is the way. Your Majesty the Grand Duke, Jango Fett spoke with a newfound respect. We are Mandalorians, glorious Mandalorians. We accepted Satine Kryze's humility for survival, and we accepted our defeat by the Galactic Republic 4,000 years ago. I am even willing to recreate the glory of Mandalorian fighting in the mercenary market. His eyes were now extremely firm. However, we absolutely cannot accept the Death Guard bringing war and chaos to the planet Mandalore. We are not afraid of fighting, but we also need to survive and reproduce. The Mandalorians' first great development came from Ultimate Mandalore, sweeping away the barbaric customs of the Tong people and establishing the way of Mandalore. Now, we must not let the Death Guard bring the ghosts of the Tang people back to the civilized world. We are warriors, not beasts. This is the most essential difference between true Mandalorian warriors and those barbaric Death Guards. No matter what method we use, we will fight to the end. We will completely wipe out the Death Guards from this galaxy, Jango Fett declared. Very good. I look forward to the day when I can rebuild the Mandalorian Crusade under your leadership, Tang Xiao said, nodding in approval. If you want to know my purpose, then let me tell you. To defeat the Galactic Empire, I must use the power of the Mandalorians. Yes, Jango Fett was indeed the best bounty hunter and mercenary in the galaxy, but before that, he was first and foremost the leader of the true Mandalorians. This is the way, Jango Fett nodded heavily. This is your equipment, Dr. Halsey said, summoning a B-1 combat robot. The robot pushed a set of armor on a suspended cart. The armor was old Mandalorian armor, painted in military green, but it was full of scars and dents, with patchy paint. This set of armor had undoubtedly experienced countless bloody battles, crawling out of the extremely cruel mountain of corpses and sea of blood time and time again. Dr. Halsey instructed the B-1 combat robot to hand the armor to Jango Fett. According to your request, I have kept this armor as original as possible. It has not been repainted or polished. However, I used Beskar steel to fill in some missing parts for you, referring to other armor styles, such as crotch guards and leg guards. Additionally, after scanning, I repaired some cracks and hidden wounds in the armor. Speaking of this, I can't help but think of the fact that in the Book of Boba Fett, Boba wore this crotchless armor and stood at the door shooting at people, shamelessly flaunting his empty crotch. Is this mocking others? The funniest thing is that there is such a big gap that no bullet has been shot through. And what's even funnier is that Din Djarin, who has a crotch protector next to him, actually got shot twice in the crotch. All the villains in the novel seem to aim at the armor, right? Thank you, Jango Fett said. Next, don't leave in a hurry. I will arrange for engineers to equip you with a full set of combat equipment based on your combat habits. Additionally, if you insist on taking your son Boba Fett with you, I will also need to get him a combat uniform, Dr. Halsey said. Jango Fett nodded, took his armor, and put it on solemnly. Tang Xiao didn't want to continue talking to these brothers at this time, so he left them to reminisce on their own. He winked at Dr. Halsey, and the two left the laboratory. How is John? Tang Xiao asked. He still needs some adjustments. He had some heart problems last week, but they have been resolved. Now I have to make sure that his body is in perfect condition. After all, he also wants to go to the planet Mandalore, which is too far away from Dawn Planet. If any problem arises, we have no solution, Dr. Halsey said. Tang Xiao frowned and asked, since it is also the second-generation Spartan technology, why did Jango Fett's transformation go so smoothly? First of all, I need to correct you. Jango Fett's transformation did not go smoothly. He was rescued from life and death many times. In addition, although he and John are both second-generation Spartan technology, they are not the same, Dr. Halsey explained as she led Tang Xiao toward another laboratory. It's different? Tang Xiao was a little confused. At this time, they had entered another room, which was Dr. Halsey's personal office. She clicked a few times on more than a dozen sets of complex holographic projection screens in front of her, projecting a large amount of data. John is still undergoing a new round of adjustments. Let me give you a brief explanation first, Dr. Halsey said, pointing to the data. There is no doubt that after I saw these Spartans you gave me, I am very convinced that this must be my handiwork. Although I have almost forgotten the previous things since boarding the mothership and entering the hibernation cabin, it is not difficult to see my personal habits and traces. She smiled bitterly. By the way, for this reason, I also found traces of myself in the design data of the Trade Federation's Endless-class super aircraft carrier. How many things did I make back then? What happened? Forget it, it's over. Indeed, it is precisely because of this that you can quickly restart the Spartan project and apply it, Tang Xiao said. No matter what, this is your own research result. There is nothing better than learning from yourself. Dr. Halsey nodded and said, Okay, but what I need to tell you is that the second-generation Spartan technology recorded in the database cannot be copied rigidly. On the one hand, it is because in the Principality of Dawn, many basic technologies actually use the system of the Principality of Dawn. If we want to completely copy it, we have to copy all the technology and industrial systems that I used to have in the UNSC. This is naturally impossible. Yes, solving the differences in technology, integrating with the existing technology system, and finding alternatives are the biggest problems in our current technology research and development process. Tang Xiao nodded in agreement. On the other hand, Jango Fett's genes are not completely human, or let me put it another way, they are not purely human, Halsey said. In his body, he retains some elements from Tau human gene fragments, and I even found a few genetic keys that are likely to come from the ancient Sith. This also confirms the history of the Mandalorians. They have experienced many racial fusions, starting with Tau human-dominated population and becoming racially diversified. In the process, their genes have evolved. Dr. Halsey seemed tired of standing, so she walked over to the swivel chair, sat down, crossed her legs, and assumed a lazy posture. She then began to explain. I have studied the history of the Mandalorians in depth, and I can tell you with certainty that the Mandalorian social system of survival of the fittest 4,000 years ago was, to a large extent, inevitable for the great integration of races. By maintaining the custom of survival of the fittest, they could eliminate all the failures in the process of racial integration, those deformed babies, by abandoning or killing them. Over time, those harmful and incompatible genes were filtered out from the Mandalorians' inheritance. This led to the emergence of the extremely powerful Mandalorian warriors at the peak of the Mandalorian Crusade. So, you have modified and adjusted the technology of the second-generation Spartans, Tang Xiao said. Yes, some changes may not be considered adjustments in your opinion. But for a life, a change of 1/10,000th may have fatal consequences, Dr. Halsey replied. Jango Fett's transformation project is no different from John's. Carbonized ceramic bone replacement, muscle enhancement surgery, thyroid catalyst implantation, superconducting fiber nerve dendrites, etc. But what was used on Jango Fett was based on his features and a fine-tuned renovation plan. But why would there be a problem with John? Tang Xiao asked again. In a word, he is not acclimatized, Dr. Halsey said. He underwent modifications at the UNSC before boarding the Mothership. Those modification projects are also different from what they are now. To ensure that he can continue to be as active as he is, I had to fine-tune him, adapting his transformation to the materials we have. If I didn't do that, maybe just a cut would cause him incurable damage. Tang Xiao nodded, as if he understood, then asked, what about the transformation of the other Mandalorian warriors? If they want to be mass-produced, what are the possibilities? They were all transformed using the technology of the first-generation Spartans. The extent of the transformation was not that great, so they were relatively simple. Therefore, their physical fitness was not as good as that of the second-generation Spartans, but it was still several times better than the clones of the Galactic Empire soldiers. However, I am still very responsible in telling you that when the Spartan project was established, you told me that gathering a large number of Mandalorians to form a powerful Spartan superpower with Mandalorians as the core was not possible, Dr. Halsey said. Why? Tang Xiao asked. I told you the answer just now, Dr. Halsey waved her hand. The genetic fragments in each Mandalorian are different. During the process of racial integration of Mandalorians, there were at least thousands of races involved. Maybe their dominant genes make them look human, but you never know what their recessive genes are. So for the Spartan project, every Mandalorian is a single individual that cannot be copied. This determines that they cannot be mass-produced. Tang Xiao frowned, suddenly thinking of another very troublesome issue. Dr. Halsey seemed to read his thoughts and said, I know what you are thinking. Yes, most people in this galaxy have the same problem. You should have also noticed that in this galaxy, although the Galactic Empire now pursues human supremacy, the previous history of the Galactic Republic emphasized racial equality. Under this idea, the gap between races is actually very small, unless there are indeed significant physical differences between the two races. So interracial marriages are actually very common. She stretched out her hands and gestured. For example, After a human bloodline lasted for dozens of generations, it suddenly intermarried with a Twi'lek and gave birth to a mixed-blood offspring. But this mixed-blood offspring continued to intermarry, and so on. After dozens of generations of interbreeding and marrying humans, you will look no different from other humans, right? However, genes don't lie. The genetic fragments of the Twi'leks will remain within the recessive genes of a bloodline. So what you're saying is that a super soldier transformation plan like the Spartan plan is not feasible in this galaxy? Tang Xiao asked. I somewhat understand why my master, Darth Plagueis, wanted to implement the clone soldier project instead of a modified human soldier project. Under these complex genetic conditions, cloning is the only way to ensure mass production. From this perspective, you should understand the value of the hundreds of millions of frozen embryos left in the mothership's cold storage, Dr. Halsey explained. They are all pure-blooded races, regardless of which race they belong to. So, I suggest that since there is no shortage of people in the Principality of Dawn, it is best to preserve these pure-blood racial embryos. At least until we completely decipher the secret of the frozen embryos on the mothership. End of chapter. Chapter 1782, Crusader-Powered Armor. Tang Xiao nodded and said, given the current situation, sending John to the planet Mandalore to assist Jango Fett and the others is indeed the best course of action. Mandalore is too far and beyond our immediate reach. Even if Jango Fett and his team can't achieve their objectives, causing a significant disturbance would still be beneficial. Don't worry about John. He is more than capable, Dr. Halsey replied, her eyebrows showing a mix of emotions whenever she mentioned his name. Where is his equipment? Dr. Otto Ostavis should have completed it by now, right? Tang Xiao inquired. Dr. Halsey shook her head. No, I asked Dr. Otto to continue with his own projects. I designed John's combat power armor myself. Oh, are you that busy? Tang Xiao asked, frowning. Only the things I develop can be entrusted to him with confidence, Dr. Halsey said. She then patted her forehead and suddenly asked, did I know John before? Why do you ask that? Tang Xiao responded. Because when I face him, there's always something different. It feels like there's a tacit understanding, Halsey said, looking puzzled. Tang Xiao nodded. Yes, you do know him, and you're very familiar with him. He is someone you can trust completely. Really? No wonder, Dr. Halsey mused, a slight blush appearing on her cheeks. Tang felt that Dr. Halsey might have misunderstood. He raised his hand to explain, but found himself at a loss for words. How could he explain that she and John 117 were not from the same era? Dr. Halsey was at least 20 or 30 years older than John. She was already a successful and renowned scientist when she launched the Spartan Project, and John 17 was just a young recruit at that time. But now, Dr. Halsey appeared to be around 30 years old, and John 117 was about the same age. Explaining this discrepancy could lead to existential doubts among them, which would be disastrous. Tang Xiao glanced at Dr. Halsey again, noting her intellectual beauty. Could something be developing between them? This thought, though somewhat forbidden, intrigued him. Dr. Halsey, regaining her professional demeanor, took out another report. I also handed over the design of the Thor's Hammer power armor to Dr. Otto Ostavis and Rory Swan. We concluded that it will take at least 3 to 5 years to create power armor of this level. What are the main technical difficulties? Tang Xiao asked. The primary challenge is the neural connection system, which can directly read the user's movements through neurons, reducing the reaction time of the power armor to less than 1 microsecond, making it almost a real-time response. However, our current technology is far from achieving this. Dr. Otto Ostavis proposed using brainwave control with AI assistance, similar to his octopus claws. But even he doesn't have full control over his own claws, so this method is not viable, Dr. Halsey explained. So, what's your alternative? Tang Xiao asked. We decided to modify the CMC-300 power armor. Chief Engineer Rory Swan provided significant assistance in this regard, Dr. Halsey said. First, we removed unnecessary components from the CMC-300 power armor, such as the ammunition boxes on the shoulders and additional armor belts on the chest and waist. This streamlining will make the armor more efficient and easier to control. Tang Xiao nodded as he listened to Dr. Halsey's explanation. So, Dr. Otto Ostavus helped us design a new engine that is only half the size of the previous one. This allows us to install the engine on the back of the power armor, eliminating the need for an integrated engine system from the chest to the back, like the current CMC 300, which takes up a huge volume, Dr. Halsey continued. Dr. Otto has unique insights on energy engines. The engine system he developed, along with the weapon system designed by Dr. Zhang Jiarui, represents the pinnacle of energetics research in the entire galaxy, Dr. Halsey added. It was indeed a pleasant surprise that Zhang Jiarui had grown into a energy scientist. Dr. Octopus, known from superhero works like Marvel, designs with a focus that surpasses the rough designs seen in Star Wars. While his designs may not be ideal for frontal battlefields or mass production, they are perfect for super soldiers like John 117, Dr. Halsey explained. The new power armor for John 117 is 42% lighter than the CMC 300, with a 31% reduction in volume and a 10% increase in power. However, the elimination of the main armor belt has reduced its protection capability. It is more suitable for elite squads, such as the Mandalorians, rather than the frontal battlefield, Dr. Halsey concluded. Tang Xiao smiled. I guess those Mandalorians would rather continue wearing their primitive armor without power assistance than accept the latest powered armor you worked so hard to develop, right? Exactly, Dr. Halsey sneered. However, I named this model of power armor Crusader Type 1. When they found out, their expressions were priceless. They have the power to use it, and I have the power to name it after the Mandalorian Crusaders, right? Tang Xiao was amused by Dr. Halsey's playful side. Naming the new power armor Crusader was a subtle jab at the ungrateful Mandalorian warriors who couldn't really get angry at such a half-joking move. It was quite entertaining. In the Halo series, Dr. Proth Halsey was often portrayed as professional, dignified, and even a little paranoid, especially in her later years. This playful side was a stark contrast to her usual demeanor, perhaps due to different experiences. At that moment, the metal gate on the other side of the laboratory opened, and a man over 2 meters tall walked in. No, it was a powered armor. The height of this power armor was about 2 meters. Unlike the bloated and round CMC 300 power armor, this new armor was compact and close-fitting, almost like a larger version of ordinary armor. The only indication that it was powered armor was the backpack-like engine system on its back. This is the Crusader Type 1's powered armor? Tang Xiao examined the armor and nodded with satisfaction. Yes, we produced a total of 20 units, and the cost is almost enough to build a cruiser, Dr. Halsey said, still a bit aggrieved. Those Mandalorians are a complete waste. It doesn't matter. If they don't need it, allocate it to the Fourth Army, Tang Xiao decided with a wave of his hand. Didn't the Fourth Army reject power armor? Dr. Halsey, now a core technician of the Dawn Principality, was well aware of the Fourth Army's stance. They rejected cumbersome power armor like the CMC 300. They find it too bulky and don't care about death, Tang Xiao explained. Xiao said, however, in the latest expansion of the Fourth Army, there are some ordinary soldiers with outstanding achievements transferred from the Army. These ordinary soldiers can drive power armor to close the gap with the soldiers of the Fourth Army. Ordinary soldiers? No matter how good they are, it's impossible to reach the level of the Fourth Legion, right? I'm afraid not many people can withstand such a test, Dr. Halsey remarked. I have told them that the first premise for all soldiers who apply to join the Fourth Army is life or death, Tang Xiao said calmly. If you can't handle the training and testing, then you will die. If you are afraid of death, don't submit an application to join our most elite and powerful legion. A mechanical whirring sound filled the air as a soldier with a rugged face emerged from the power armor. It was evident that this soldier once had a handsome face, but the harsh realities of the battlefield had transformed his appearance. Your Excellency. The soldier quickly stood at attention and saluted upon seeing Tang Xiao, looking extremely surprised. Tang Xiao, with his near-photographic memory, called out his name effortlessly. Huang Yihao, are you a tester of the Crusader power armor? Yes, Your Majesty. Dr. Halsey invited me to test this power armor. All I can say is it's incredibly powerful. It's outstanding. Hey, you actually know me. Huang Yihao was visibly excited. Of course, I remember. After the Battle of Maristal Planet, I awarded you a medal, Tang Xiao replied. He then turned to Dr. Halsey. How did you know about my plan? I just mentioned that I would give the Crusader power armor to those soldiers who applied to join the 4th Legion, but you have already asked Huang Yehao to help you test it? I asked the army to recommend 10 of their strongest and best soldiers to test the power armor. Isn't that normal? Dr. Halsey responded, brushing a strand of hair aside. And the army's strongest and best soldiers want to test power armor. I don't know about joining the 4th Army. Doctor, here is the test data from this time. Huang Yehao handed a pad to Dr. Halsey, but his eyes remained fixed on Tang Xiao. Soldier, tell me, why do you want to apply to join the 4th Army? Tang Xiao asked, addressing Huang Yehao's concern. You know, with your military exploits and qualifications, if you continue to stay in the army, you should be promoted soon to lieutenant colonel and become a commander. Huang Yehao replied firmly. I just want to go into battle and kill the enemy, Your Majesty. I don't like hiding in an office and giving orders. I prefer to stand on the front line and penetrate the enemy's chest with blazing bullets. I don't care about the overall progress of our front. I only know that every enemy I destroy helps the 4th civilization take a small step forward. Tang Xiao nodded approvingly. So how many steps have you helped the 4th civilization advance? Huang Yehao was momentarily stunned by Tang Xiao's direct question before responding. 1,000 steps. Yes, 1,000 steps. Only more, not less. Tang Xiao stared into his eyes and noticed a trace of pleasure in Huang Yehao's gaze. This made him very satisfied. It's a pity that you are not force-sensitive. Otherwise, you would make an excellent Sith. Being able to join the 4th Army is enough, Huang Yehao replied firmly. I like this guy very much. You should give him more attention, Tang Xiao said, pointing at Huang Yehao. Don't look to me for that, Dr. Halsey waved her hand dismissively. Unlike John 117, she was clearly not interested in Huang Yehao. The 4th Legion's strengthening method is completely different from the Spartan plan. That is Ambry's responsibility, and I will not participate in the part that the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group is responsible for. Of course, as I continue to study the Spartan project, I will also fully consider the technology of the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group. During this time, I will seek out that woman several times. Shirley Birkin, isn't she attending a meeting on Planet Haven these days? Since the reorganization of the intelligence department, Tang Xiao had developed a very detailed understanding of his officials. Oh, it's another one, Dr. Halsey replied casually as she began to review the experimental data. Alexia, I'm surprised you and she were able to converse, Tang Xiao remarked. This Alexia was, of course, Alexia Ashford, the creator of the T. Veronica virus in Resident Evil codename Veronica, and an unprecedented genius. Her remarkable talent had put William Birkin, the genius of the Umbrella Company, to shame. At only 10 years old, she had made even William Birkin hesitant to face her brilliance. If she hadn't frozen herself for 10 years to stabilize the Veronica virus in her body, then in that era, there would have been no such figures as Wesker and William Birkin. I won't go into detail here. You can look them up if you're curious. Tang Xiao had awakened her about 7 months ago. At that time, the signs of a large-scale invasion by the Galactic Republic were already very apparent, and Tang Xiao was certain that the intensity of this invasion would be unprecedented. He had no confidence in withstanding the all-out attack of the Galactic Republic. Therefore, he chose to awaken one of the legendary characters who met the conditions. Tang Xiao couldn't see who the legendary figure was before awakening them. He chose this mainly because he found it was a 2-for-1 option. With the mentality that 2 are better than 1, he made his choice. In the end, it was Alexia Ashford and her playboy brother, Alfred Ashford, who woke up. Chapter 1783, Genius Girl. At that time, Tang Xiao felt very unhappy when he saw that the person who woke up was Alfred Ashford, a standard dandy. Is this all you told me to do? A genius girl dragged a useless girl control and playboy? This is such a loss, he thought, but there was nothing he could do about it. That summoning was actually of no use to Tang Xiao. The only effect was to throw out the name T. Veronica, which was already causing some turmoil due to the T-virus biological weapon. The commander of the Galactic Republic, Cassio Tag, only became more suspicious. Fortunately, In the end, they repelled the invasion of the unprecedented army of the Galactic Republic, and the Ashford siblings were also arranged to go to Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group. Now, the super companies in the Fourth Civilization have become accustomed to Tang Xiao's way of employing people. He would wake up some people from time to time and then directly arrange for them to occupy high positions in the company. And it turns out that none of these people who landed in the air are not amazing super geniuses. The same was true for the two siblings, Alexia and Alfred Ashford. Shirley Birkin calmly assigned a project team to them and then let them study on their own. This was just a drop in the bucket for her Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, and the real core strength of the group was still under her control. As for the finances of the Dawn Principality, it would naturally allocate funds and investments to the newly awakened people to support their research. For example, Tang Xiao directly allocated 5 billion yuan to invest in Alexia Ashford to further expand her team from Shirley Birkin. Next, if Alexia Ashford had enough ability, she would naturally carry forward her investment on such a platform. And this was actually the growth of Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group. Alexia Ashford's research direction was naturally the T. Veronica virus. Compared with the T virus that uses the ancestor virus and leeches to combine, this virus was also based on the ancestor virus, but combined with ant genes. Compared with the T virus, it had more social attributes and spread very quickly. Of course, what the Kingdom of Dawn needed now was not an uncontrollable virus that could destroy a planet. What the army needed now was a T. Veronica virus that could be stably used as a biological weapon. At this point, Alexia Ashford still had a long way to go, but the biggest surprise was that Alexia Ashford had stabilized the state of the virus in her body, which meant that she did not need to freeze herself for another 15 years, unlike the plot of Resident Evil. Because she was awakened 3 days in advance, she did not evolve into a complete form. Even in the Principality of Dawn, there were not many people who could fight Alexia Ashford in this state. But what the Kingdom of Dawn needed now was not an invincible warrior, but Alexia's research results, which meant thousands of troops. Because compared to the T-virus, which required a lot of effort to control, the units produced by the T. Veronica virus were inherently group-like and assimilated. A large army could be formed easily. However, because the war was very busy, Tang Xiao was occupied with signing a contract with Palpatine and then seizing the rare armistice period to move the Rendili planet as quickly as possible. Therefore, he really didn't know what Alexia Ashford was up to, and he didn't bother to find out. This could actually be regarded as one of Mrs. M's mistakes before the reorganization of the intelligence department. She did not control Alexia, a dangerous person, enough. But now, hearing Dr. Halsey say that she actually had an eye-opener with Alexia Ashford and that they were jointly researching and promoting the Spartan project, this was really interesting. Tang Xiao decided that he should find time to go to Alexia's place to investigate and see what her plan was. After all, if we look at the original plot, Alexia and her brother both had huge personality flaws. Hidden antisocial personalities often emerge in various narratives. For instance, in the plot of Resident Evil, Alexia plans to spread the T. Veronica virus across the entire Earth, assimilating all living beings into T. Veronica's infected populace. She envisions herself as a queen ant, ruling over this new world. Unfortunately, her plan is thwarted when her incompetent brother awakens her 4 days early, leaving her in an imperfect state. Consequently, she succumbs to the protagonist's efforts. The cannon in her third form is so precise it can hit mosquitoes, so why make a fuss? Tang Xiao engaged in a conversation with Dr. Halsey, while Huang Yehao completed his report and departed in his experimental Crusader Type 1 powered armor. Tang Xiao noticed a semi-Resian man waiting outside the door, significantly larger than his own kind. Tang Xiao was familiar with the semi-Resians, as many served in the army of the Principality of Dawn. Their massive bodies, immense strength, and stable abdominal and foot structure made them ideal for heavy firepower roles. However, only one semi-Resian stood out among countless warriors and was selected as a candidate for the Fourth Army, Cummings. "Let's go and have a look at John 117, Halsey said after recording the operation data submitted by Huang Yehao. She put away her personal terminal. Tang Xiao nodded, and they walked in the opposite direction of the laboratory. Along the way, Dr. Halsey explained the function of each lab. Tang Xiao was impressed by her versatility. She was working on several completely different projects simultaneously. No wonder she had mentioned being very busy before. It was now evident that she truly was. Her primary responsibility, the Spartan project, was an enormous undertaking. Tang Xiao had provided her with data spanning from the first to the fourth generation of Sparta, effectively quadrupling her workload. Although Dr. Halsey had developed all this data herself in another time and space, it still represented decades of her hard work. Converting it into usable data was an unimaginably massive task. In addition to the Spartan project, Dr. Halsey had also taken on the research and development of the supporting Crusader I-type power armor, designing it personally. While the Crusader Type 1 power armor was streamlined based on the CMC 300 power armor, the latter was intended for frontline combat soldiers. Transforming it into special operations armor suitable for the Spartan Project super soldiers required significant modifications. Chapter 1784: The Challenging Production of the Endless-class Super Aircraft Carrier. In addition to the Spartan Project and Crusader I-powered armor, Dr. Halsey also served as a consultant in the development of the Infinity-class Super Aircraft Carrier. Although the main design team was organized by the Trade Alliance, no one in the scientific research team of thousands, assembled by Newt Gunray, could compare with Dr. Halsey. This disparity wasn't due to a lack of funds or resources on Newt Gunray's part, but rather the caliber of talent he could currently recruit. This highlights another advantage of the core and inner rings compared to the outer ring star regions in this galaxy, the educational advantage. Most of the well-known universities in the galaxy are located in the core and inner rings, with only a few in the middle ring and almost none in the outer ring. Consequently, the core and inner rings have a significant edge in terms of talent supply over the outer ring. At the beginning of the war, this wasn't as apparent because the entire Galactic Republic was unified, and many of the talents recruited by the Trade Federation came from the core and inner rings. However, as the war progressed, the Galactic Republic and later the Galactic Empire began to completely blockade the outer ring star area, halting the exchange of talents. Naturally, the overall quality of the scientific research team that the Trade Alliance could recruit declined. Additionally, the split within the Interstellar Banking Association had a negative impact. Rush Clovis, the chairman of the Interstellar Banking Association, was once a senior official and a member of the Confederation of Independent Systems. Much of the initial work on the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier was carried out under his leadership. However, Clovis's love for Padme Amidala eventually turned into hatred, leading him to betray the Confederacy of Independent Systems and join the Galactic Republic. This betrayal caused a complete break between the human faction and the moon faction of the Interstellar Banking Association, resulting in a split. This incident led to a significant loss of R&D personnel in the early stages of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier project. Furthermore, Padme Amidala, in collaboration with Anakin Skywalker, managed to steal part of the development plan, marking the first leak of the project. Consequently, the quality of the R&D team for the Endless-class super aircraft carrier declined because they could no longer recruit talents from the core circle through Rush Clovis. The second leak occurred during the Battle of Semires, where much of the research data was obtained by Shen Qiaowen and Tang Xiao's master, Darth Tenebris. Although Tang Xiao believed that this data was in the hands of the Galactic Republic, it didn't prevent him from concluding that the project had lost its element of surprise. Now, the major forces in the galaxy are aware of some aspects of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier, even if the information isn't complete. However, it's important to note that these leaks did not compromise the core secrets of the Endless class. The core technology of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier actually originates from the ancient super civilization in the Halo world, the Forerunners. The Forerunners were also galactic overlords. To truly compare them, one would have to look at the Visari from Sins of a Solar Empire at their peak, the Xel'Naga from Starcraft, or the Reapers from Mass Effect. In this galaxy, only the Killik people, supported by the god Tai, can compare with them. In other words, compared to these extraordinary beings, the Visaris are somewhat lacking. Of course, the Forerunner technology in the Endless-class super aircraft carrier is still very rudimentary. It has been analyzed and integrated into UNSC technology, making it somewhat interpretable. However, other Forerunner technologies remain incomprehensible, even if they are available. The Forerunner technology that has been deciphered mainly pertains to the design of the engine power system. This means that even though the Galactic Empire has had 2 leaks and a preliminary understanding of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier, they still do not fully grasp the capabilities of the Forerunner-supported engine power system. How many functions can this battleship perform? Interestingly, this part of the Forerunner technology was completed under the guidance of Dr. Halsey, who led a team of scientists from the Trade Alliance. These scientists were competent but not exceptional. During their journey, Tang Xiao learned that this was the main point of contention between Dr. Halsey and Newt Gunray. The advanced technology of the Forerunners significantly increased costs, which conflicted with Newt Gunray's business-oriented mindset. He viewed the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier as merely an upgraded version of their Rookery Hook-class battleship. Essentially, Newt Gunray wanted to use the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier as an armed cargo ship, capable of fighting in wartime and hauling goods in peacetime. Imagine using the aircraft carrier to collect debts from those who borrowed money and refused to repay it. Wouldn't it be impressive? Especially now that Tang Xiao and Palpatine have signed a peace agreement, Newt Gunray has shifted his focus entirely to making money. This led to a direct conflict between Dr. Halsey and Newt Gunray. Although one was a woman and the other a coward, they engaged in numerous acts to undermine and confront each other. Eventually, Count Dooku intervened to resolve the conflict, allowing the troubled and nearly abandoned Infinity-class super aircraft carrier project to be completed. Why Count Dooku? Despite the Trade Federation being expelled from the Galactic Empire and having many core and inner ring assets confiscated, they are still betting on both the Confederation of Independent Systems and the Principality of Dawn. In other words, although the Principality of Dawn and the Galactic Empire have made peace, the Trade Federation continues to support the war efforts of the Confederation of Independent Systems. Officially, this is attributed to different internal factions, similar to the conflict between the Galactic Republic and the Confederation of Independent Systems. Additionally, the implementation of the Endless-class super aircraft carrier plan was assigned to the planet Semiramis to be completed by the Semiramis people. And where is the planet Semiramis? It lies on the eastern boundary of the Milky Way, within the core control area of the Federation of Independent Systems. This is why Count Dooku places great importance on the development of the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier and personally intervened to resolve the conflict, because once the Infinity-class super aircraft carrier is operational, it will directly join the Navy of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. This was an agreement reached between Tang Xiao and Count Dooku. While discussing these matters, Tang Xiao and Dr. Halsey arrived at another laboratory. Through the glass, they saw a tall figure. The man stood with his back to them. It was John 117. A special thanks to 213 Ager for the 888 starting coins.